I'd like to welcome everyone present today and those watching the broadcast and call the December 11th, 2018 regular meeting to order with all board members present. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance from the Air Force Rotc Color Guard from Mesa High School will now present the colors. Please stand for the presentation of the colors. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry colors! Order! Colors! Right face! Port arms! Forward heart!
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, JROTC Color Guard from Mesa High School. If you wish to address the board on any agenda item before the board today or on a subject that is not on today's agenda and your name is not on the speaker list printed on blue paper located at both entrances to the auditorium, and you have not already submitted a request for public testimony form, please complete the form and submit it to Marty Stoltz, the board action officer on your left. Speaker forms are located at both entrances to the auditorium. I'd like a motion to adopt today's agenda item with item H8, the swearing in of elected board members, to be considered next following the adoption of the agenda, and items H1, Community Advisory Committee CAC for Special Education Semi-Annual Update to the Board, item H2, District English Learner Advisory Committee or DLAC Semi-Annual Update to the Board, item I3, the External Auditor Annual Financial Statements for fiscal year 2017 and 18, and section J, the Superintendent's Consent Agenda, to be considered immediately following the student presentation. Item H9, the annual organizational meeting of the board, will be heard at the conclusion of all other items on the agenda. Is there a motion? So moved. We have a motion from Dr. McQuarrie. Is there a second? Second. We have a second from Trustee Barrera. Please vote. And that passes. At this point in time, we will take up item H8 on the agenda, the swearing in of elected board members.
Thank you. We will now conduct the swearing in of the elected board members and administer the oath of office. Thank you, Mr. Mock, Judge McConnell, and Mr. Yang. I would now like to ask board member Kevin Beiser and Mr. Daniel Mock to step up to the podium for the oath of office. Mr. Beiser's family is welcome to accompany him to the podium for the administration of the oath of office, if they are here.
Mr. Mock is my family. Okay, so where do you want to stand here?
I need the
microphone. Okay. All right.
Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I,
Kevin Beiser,
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. 73.
Thank you, Mr. Mock and Mr. Beiser. Thank you. I would now like to ask Board Member Dr. Mike McQuarrie, Judge Judith McConnell, 4th District Court of Appeal, and the Associated Student Body Council President, Mr. Jerry Yang. They would come forward.
So Jerry and I have divided up this responsibility, and we're going to do it together.
Alrighty. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Dr. Mike McQuarrie,
I, Dr. Mike McQuarrie,
do solemnly swear that I will support
do solemnly swear that I will support
And defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of
the
California
Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the
I will bear true faith and allegiance to
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
California.
Constitution of the State of California.
that I will take this obligation freely,
I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties that I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
congrats.
Thank you, Mr. Yang, Judge McConnell, and Dr. McQuarrie. Now, do we have any requests for public testimony regarding the swearing-in ceremony? No requests? Thank you. Now, I would like to invite the board members if they'd like to comment on this, and we'll start while we're waiting for Mr. Mike to come. Need some pictures?
Same direction.
Thank you.
He'll have this.
Thank you. I would now like to invite the board members to make any comments at this time, beginning to my left, and we'll go all the way up to the end. Dr. Mike, do you want to say anything first?
No, this is comments about the election.
You don't have to. We won't force you.
Oh, about the election that just happened on November 6th that allowed me to be reelected here? Oh, that one. I absolutely am thrilled with being reelected. I believe it gives us as candidates, as well as the board, as well as our staff and students and community, an A+. It was a resounding statement of support of the challenge that we had and the manner in which we addressed that, the successes that we have made incredible gains. Our students have performed exceptionally well. I received 177,000 votes, with 60% of the total votes. Kevin Beiser, our president, received 217,000 votes, and that was 70% of the total votes cast.
73.
73%. And
But who's counting?
we're not sure, but we think it's the highest number of votes ever received in a school board election in the state of California. So in addition to that, our Proposition YY received 66% of the vote, well over the percent needed to pass. So we're very, very excited about the outcome. We look forward to working together to produce the results that'll move us even further forward as we finish Vision 2020 and move into Vision 2030. We'll have the board that can do that. We have the administrative team that can make it happen, and we have a staff and students who are inspired to produce the outcomes to make it complete. Thank you.
We'll just skip over and get your remarks, and then we'll come back to Richard.
I would like to thank all the voters, the over 216,000 voters that voted for me, that have entrusted me to continue to fighting for the kids, and to making sure that we as advocates for the public trust also are fighting to make sure that our school district is transparent, and that we are strategically allocating the finite resources that we have to maximize student outcomes. And that I will continue to listen to parents and to community members so that we can find solutions to the problems that exist. This work is never done. There's always opportunities to improve through the continual cycle of improvement where we're constantly assessing how we're doing, identifying recommendations and opportunities to better serve our children, and then work towards implementing programmatic changes or plans or funding allocations to meet those ongoing needs. That's my passion. I love this job. Public service is a passion of mine because I grew up in a family in abject poverty. We went from living in tents to living in a homeless shelter, which was a huge upgrade. The homeless shelter had running water. It had food in the morning. It had a shower. It was wonderful. And just think of that we all have challenges in our lives in the past. Currently, today, many of us are facing a lot of challenges which a lot of people don't speak about. But we must always strive to be kind to one another and compassionate, and understand that many people do not speak of the challenges that they're dealing with in their lives today. So always work to be kind with other folks. And one of the things that we have been working on in the school district for many years is the restorative justice approach, realizing that all of our students are lifelong learners. So that when they make mistakes, we want to help them, get them the support that they need so that they can grow and improve and become better people. Because that's our job. Our job is not to cast away people that don't follow the rules, that make mistakes, but our job as educators and as members of an interconnected community is to always reach out and help other people so that they can do better, because we know, given the support, they can graduate from high school and be successful. And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is to continue to fight for our kids. So with that, I want to thank all the voters, thank everybody that has supported me over the years since 2009. Thank you very much, and I look forward to engaging in the work ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
And finally, I'd like to thank my husband, Dan Mock, for swearing me in this evening. Thank you, Dan. January will be 14 years. Wow. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we'll return to Mr. Barrera.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. I'd just like to congratulate Dr. Mike McQuarrie and Kevin Beiser on your reelection, and actually thank the voters of San Diego for returning these two career educators to the school board. Mike and Kevin, although they share, the experience of being career educators, they bring to our board amazing, unique qualities. I think when I think of one word that I would define Mike with, it would be thoughtfulness. Mike is an incredibly thoughtful listener who builds consensus and brings, a community together around a vision. And it's just an amazing quality to bring to our district and to our board. And you've made a tremendous contribution in your first term, and I know in your second term, we've got really exciting things to look forward to that you're going to bring to the table, Mike, so congratulations. And when I think of one word to define Kevin, I think of passion. You mentioned it yourself. Kevin is a passionate driver of change who challenges the system every day on behalf of kids and on behalf of what's best for the community. And serving with you for 8 years, Kevin, has been an honor. And what we're going to see from you and as you go forward into your third term is, I think, really people can imagine the things that we're going to be capable of as a system with your leadership. So two amazing career educators with unique contributions that they bring to our district every day. And thank you, voters of San Diego, for returning Kevin and Mike to our school board.
Thank you, Mr. Barrera. Dr. Evans.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to extend my congratulations to Dr. Mike McQuarrie and to President Kevin Beiser for your reelection. But the biggest endorsement is obviously by the voters in terms of their overwhelming votes for you. And I've certainly seen over the past 4 years we've been making steady improvements since Dr. Mike has been on the board. And for the 8 years that Kevin Beiser has been on the board, we've also seen steady improvement. Sometimes people think that when people are sticking around for a while that it's simply more of the status quo, but the members of this board have really shown that they're committed to really reforming and transforming our school districts. And obviously that was also endorsed by the community in terms of the overwhelming support for Proposition YY. I recently attended a conference of the National Institute of Civil Discourse, and I think that they and the other members of this board are really examples of thoughtful civil discourse, that we can talk about topics, we can agree sometimes and disagree at other times, but we can do this without impugning the motives of the people who have different points of view. And I think that's one of the great things about this board, that we have been able to work for several years in a very, very civil manner and haven't seen the rancor and fractiousness that has existed in years prior. So once again, congratulations to both of you, and I look forward to another great 4 years.
Thank you, Dr. Evans, and I would like to offer my congratulations also to Dr. Michael McCurry and Mr. Kevin Beiser. I think we're at the stage now where, you reach a plateau and then you start climbing even higher, and I'm looking forward to us going to heights that people can't even imagine. We think that we've made some steady gains, but I really want to see us to just really do like the rockets do, go beyond the atmosphere and to the next level. And I believe that we can do that. We have a mindset to do it. We have the right people on board, and we can do that. We will commit ourselves to doing it, to ensuring that our goal, that I know that each of you, each board member here is committed to one thing, and that's to ensure that every child has his or her needs met. And we want to see more of the actualization of that for every child. And we're thankful to the voters, to the citizens of San Diego, for sending you back, and also for giving us the bond measure this time. And again, we're committed to ensuring that all of our children succeed. Congratulations and welcome back.
Thank you.
I guess now I am to introduce our area superintendent, Dr. Lamont Jackson, who will come forward with today's presentation from Zamorano School, which is one of my cluster schools from District E.
Good evening, President Beiser. Congratulations, and Dr. Mike McQuarrie, congratulations on your reelection. Vice President Whitehurst Payne and Superintendent Martin, it is my honor and privilege to introduce students and staff from Zamorano, our largest elementary school in the district, who will be sharing a little bit about their learning and the integration of arts into their core learning. And unfortunately, our principal, a wonderful leader, Derek Murchison, had a family emergency, but we have his partner and certainly a great leader, Vice Principal Robert Vera, who will introduce staff and students. So I'd like to introduce Robert now. Come on up. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We are truly honored to be here tonight to present, and we have 6 of amazing students out of our student population of 1,100 students. We have 6 amazing students who are going to share this evening the positive impact that the arts has had on them, not only academically, socially, emotionally, but also the pride that they have in our school collectively. So we were truly honored to be invited to be presenting tonight, and I would also like to give kudos to one of our 4 amazing art teachers, Mr. Don Massey, if he wouldn't mind standing up. One of our wonderful art teachers. And so this is all about our students, and they are going to be talking and sharing, again, as I said, the arts and the positive impact that it has had and continues to have on them.
Would you like the board members to go into the audience?
Yes, so board members, if you wouldn't mind coming down to the... So we'll wait till they come down.
At Zamorano, we get to explore a lot of different art processes. We could experiment with drawing, painting, printmaking, sculpture, and photography. We work with traditional things like crayons, colored pencils, clay, and tempera paint. And we also get to work with new stuff, digital photography, digital design, and 3D printing. We are fortunate to have 4 different art teachers and experience a variety of approaches to art making and creative thinking. All this variety in materials and learning gives us more tools to express ourselves now and later. When I think about all the art I have made at Zamorano, the thing that stands out to me the most is creativity, because all the art I've done involves many colors, shapes, and sizes. Next up is Oscar.
Every year for the past 10 years, 5th graders make a mural on our campus at the end of the school year. These are legacy murals and give us a chance to make a lasting, beautiful mark on our school. It's a way for us to say goodbye to the place we have done a lot of learning and growing at. Our school is becoming more colorful and interesting every year. I am looking forward to my chance to do it at the end of this school year. This year, 5th grade students are making digital murals with iPads in our class, and so many of them are coming out amazing because of our success with this project. One of them will be chosen to turn into this year's legacy mural at the end of the school year. For me, the things that I will most remember are the people and the staff, because if it weren't for them, this school wouldn't be so colorful and fun. But for me, that is the most memorable thing to me.
For the past couple of years, we have had the opportunity to have local artists come to school and create murals with students on our school walls. One of our teachers uses living artists for lessons that we do, and a couple of these artists live in San Diego County, and they have donated their time into making Zamorano a more beautiful place. When artists visit and paint, it is great because we get to see the stuff we are learning about in school being used by real living artists. Santos and Monty were very generous with their time while at school and answered lots of our questions while they worked on paintings with small groups of students. This spring, 2 more local artists will come to campus to paint and create with Zamorano students. Well, I can't wait to watch them work. For me, my most memorable experience with art at Zamorano was designing, drawing, painting, and coloring because I got to let my creative side take over me and fill me up with ideas. I think art in school is important because it lets everyone show their creative passion for art in every single one of their pieces.
In art class, our teachers challenge us to solve our problems in different ways. In order to do this, we are encouraged to brainstorm, sketch, and reflect on our ideas and plans. When we make an art choice, it's important to understand why we feel that way. We often have to write in art class. Writing out our thoughts or talking about them with a buddy allows us to practice think about the class concept. This helps us solve problems in art as well as other subjects. By sketching out ideas and brainstorm topics, we can make our work more interesting and more detailed. This idea of practice also lets our art be more about us, and it helps us develop our creative voice. When I think about my experience at Zamorano, the thing that stands out to me is the murals, because you don't want to walk down the hall looking at a white wall. You want to see something that makes you stop right in front of it and observe. My time at Zamorano will prepare me for middle school art because what we are creating right now is going to be like what we're going to make in middle school, but they're going to do a little bit more advanced.
I think reflection is an important skill to develop, and my time in Zamorano art classes has given me chances to practice reflecting and thinking about decisions I make while working on art projects. I find that after making different sketches for a project, it is important to take the time to think about why one idea is more exciting to me than the other. Even if I really like my first sketch or idea, I am beginning to understand that it is important to try out other ideas so that I can push myself creatively and build more stamina in the steps in art making. After completing projects, we are asked to complete exit slips. When we're writing in art class, these writing activities give us more time to reflect on the whole project and push us to see things that we did well and things that we can improve on. For me, the art project that has had the most impact on me was the creativity, because every art project is unique in its own special way, and I love seeing all of the different designs and meanings.
Sometimes in art class we are asked to collaborate and work with another student on an art project. This can be hard because you have to be a good partner. You need to be respectful of each other's ideas even if you don't agree with them all the time. Working together makes us work on speaking and listening, and this is really important in school, at home, and in whatever career we choose. When we do digital art projects, we are required to work with a partner. As well as compromising, this allows us to teach each other the apps we are using to become teachers to each other. It also gives us practice in sharing, taking turns, and developing trust with each other. If you want to make an exciting project, you need to really work well together. One of the cool things about digital art is that we can simply delete or undo mistakes. We don't have to scrub them away with an eraser. This makes us not afraid to have design fail. We can be more adventurous with our ideas and creativity. Thinking about Zamorano, the thing that has made me grow the most has been the teachers and the learning, because now I know how to solve problems myself.
And all of our time at Zamorano has pushed us to grow as people creatively, academically, and socially. I feel fortunate for all the creative experiences we have had at Zamorano, and I think that all schools should support the arts opportunities for their students. Go Zamo!
Can we give another round of applause to our amazing students? And boys and girls, can you come up, please? Can you guys all come up, boys and girls? And I just wanted to share, so our students actually had their hands in the PowerPoint presentation that you guys are seeing tonight, and the artwork that is displayed is their work. And aren't they amazing writers? And so we're certainly proud of all of our students, and as I said, this is just a small representation of our amazing 1,100 students. So I would like to introduce our students to you, and as you saw the PowerPoint, their names were up on the PowerPoint, but to formally introduce you to our students. So we have, I'm actually going to have you guys introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Carrie Wagner.
I'm Oscar Chavez.
I am Janelle Reyes.
I'm Rai Kagiwa.
I'm Brianna McMichael.
I'm Aurora Gonzalez.
And again, we want to thank you guys so much this evening for this opportunity to allow us to present and share the school that we are so proud of. Thank you so much.
Yes. I just want to say.
Wait. Okay, sit. Go ahead and sit down real quick.
Sit. The president says sit.
Okay. Have a seat. Okay. Right here.
Click. Click, click. Is this a video?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation, Zamorano Elementary School. Great job. We do have a public speaker on the item. We'll hear from them, and then we'll open it up to board member comments or questions. Citizen, you have 2 minutes.
So since the board is going to be moving public comment to the end of the school board meeting, it should shorten the meetings. I was reviewing archived agendas, and once in a while there would be a student performance. So primarily, board meetings are business meetings, and it takes a lot of staff time to coordinate these performances. And the children's performances are very sweet. However, not every meeting needs to have children's performances in them, so that people don't have to sit for hours and hours and hours to make public comment. Some of these meetings last 3 hours, 4 hours, 7 hours, I mean sometimes 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. But an important thing to know is that parents should know that field trips and clubs and all these school activities that have been presented at these board meetings have to be provided at no cost to students. They don't have to fundraise. They don't have to pay for field trips. The school district is supposed to provide that. And the law says every child gets to participate or no child gets to participate. And I think that's an important thing for all kids to know, is that they do not have to pay when they're in public school. So one of the good things about it is I see that a lot of kids are able to participate in activities. I hope that they're participating and they don't have to be paying any fees for that.
Dr. Whiters-Payne?
I just wanted to say to the students at Semiannual and all the children there, I invite you all to go out. Every year they have an art exhibit, and they have every child in the school. So if you can imagine 1,100 pieces of art displayed in the auditorium, you just go through and look at all the various art projects. It's a wonderful sight to see. And if you don't get there early enough, you have to park blocks away because there are so many parents who come out and participate in this. So I extend the invitation to all of my colleagues to stop by and see some wonderful artwork there.
Great, thank you very much. We will go on now to hear item H1, the Community Advisory Committee, or CAC, for Special Education Semi-Annual Update to the Board. Please remember that you have up to 10 minutes to present your report. Please set the timer for 10 minutes.
Now? Yes. I am unfortunate in that I follow the most adorable and talented, all of whom are better public speakers than I. So anyway, I am here tonight. Oh, slide. That's not coming out of my time either? Okay. So, I'm here to represent the needs of 15,600 students with disabilities in less than 10 minutes. And so, do San Diego Unified Policies and Procedures reinforce general education accountability for educational outcomes of students with disabilities? Look at me, be brief. Not yet. These are two issues we studied all last year in our ad hoc committee on equity. Does San Diego Unified offer equitable specialized services and supports, regardless of nature of disability, regardless of the geography, regardless of any other subgroupings? And no time for nuance, no. Does San Diego Unified provide equitable access to general education programs for students with disabilities? Sort of, kinda, but too often, no. How has implementation of the UC A to G requirements to earn a San Diego Unified diploma affected the experience of students with disabilities? I think this needs a lot more study and thought, and I think it needs an opportunity for families of students with disabilities to be asked that question specifically. And I'll come back to that in a couple slides. I'm going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I'm not really sure that folks really understand what happens. So, I'm going to talk about my worries. The worries that I have for students with milder sorts of disabilities. So when a youth does not earn a high school diploma, we have an adult that will face fundamentally more challenges and difficulties in their lifetime. The safety net for adults who have mild sorts of disabilities, especially ones that lack Department of Developmental Services eligibility, is answered mostly by what resources does his or her family have to devote to the care and ongoing support of the young person. I think that's really important for you to just kind of sit with for a minute. Non-graduates, they exit unprepared for competitive integrated employment. They leave unable to check the diploma box. Yeah, they can try to achieve a GED, but that is a daunting proposition. When you can't check the diploma box, military branches are somewhat less interested. Non-graduates exit needing immediate remedial community college coursework at the same time that they are entering a post-secondary world where accommodations are all that's available anymore. The same services and supports we leave behind, OT, PT, speech, all the things that have been layered in and supporting. And so now we are left to have students, Just recently, students navigating largely reactive mental health systems, they are asked to compete for wages and admissions with their peers, and they're also looking for relationships and meaning in their life. So many non-graduates will exit without having been able to complete a meaningful career technical pathway because of an endless cycle of failure, credit recovery, summer school, failure, credit recovery, summer school. Certainly our non-graduates have not been able to experiment or experience a variety of career exploration opportunities. But don't worry, because I have anxieties also for students with more severe disabilities. We have too many students that are reaching age 22 without having been able to complete a meaningful course of study. I want to talk about what I think is meaningful. In elementary school, the 6 or 7 years that we spend in elementary school, it means not starting with the letter A and the numeral 1 every single damn year for our students with severe and moderate disabilities. It means separate settings that have age-appropriate peer groupings with predictable routines and engaging classroom materials. No employee should chastise a parent for a son or daughter. I've sat in IEP meetings where this happened, where they are told, oh, your daughter shouldn't like My Little Pony, or your son shouldn't like Thomas the Tank Engine. I'm sorry, as long as we have campuses grouping transitional kindergarten students with grade 5 in one setting, one caseload, that's what you get. The same thing over and over. It means assistive technology is considered for each and every student, not just ones in certain parts of our district. It means our district doesn't only expect rigor for our high performers, but it injects rigor and innovation into every student placement. The recent purchase of the unique curriculum, for example, should not be seen as a one-time, we've done it, check the block. And no principal should be rejecting a mod severe education specialist's request for materials that are already provided to every other general education student. Meaningful means that we don't give fewer options for electives to those who already have fewer options. It means that our individual transition plans contain students' interests, strengths, and priorities, not just goals about a snack cart because we already have a snack cart on campus. Too many of our certificates of completion are awarded to young people who have not acquired the soft skills that employers are looking for and require just to come in for an interview. Behavioral and communication skills that are intrinsic to be viewed, once leaving, as being contributing members of society. And we're going to move on. Not that I couldn't go on. So this is a lovely slide, but I am keeping to the 10-minute mark, and I'm not even in yellow. Tangible actions. I'm going to read these just because they're really small. And I look at this as a lot of these could actually be dropped right into the local control accountability plan. So, priority enrollment for vulnerable learners in pathways, and leveraging the master schedule with equity at the heart of decision making. I think that almost sounds like Superintendent Martin could have written that part, just saying. We should be infusing career readiness and meaning into our A to G course offerings for all students. We need to implement with accountability measures universal design for learning, and I sound like a broken record, but in 2010, this board adopted universal design for learning. They said it's going to be, we're doing it, and we're not there yet. There is a professional development that I know has been provided within this district, and it's called Who Decides Diploma Track. It was written by an attorney, and this parent endorses it, and it needs to be available for all staff to know what is the process, what does the law say, and I think that would go a long way. We need to begin requiring having a mindset where we're looking for the reason why a student with disabilities was removed from literacy and math instruction, especially K to 3. I cannot say that enough. We spend so much time pulling kids away from the two things that are going to fundamentally change their trajectory. That has to happen. We also need to start talking about diploma-bound students with disabilities. We need a reason for putting students in applied modified classes. And I know that there is some work being done, and I really am grateful. We need to improve data collection processes to provide managers and the public with essential information. We continue to have an IEP system that is, at least when you talk to teachers on the ground, not very user-friendly, and we still lack basic information that you would imagine managers to have. Things like what interventions what is the data supporting this intervention? What constellation of students, what cohort is doing well? What do they have in common? We can't do that yet. So we really do need, when that comes up, to have some support. I believe that there is work to have goals connecting to special education. I'd love to see goals connected to how are we doing that meaning into the course of study for students with disabilities all the way through, and talking about communication around the path to a diploma so that our 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader parents aren't stunned. And study impact. I'm going to do the one more thing, though. We're having a town hall. We'd love to see you there. Are you proud of me? 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Phenomenal job and good report. At this point in time, we don't have any public comment on this agenda item. Have we received any late speaker slips? Nope. Okay. Board member comments or questions on this report? Dr. Evans?
You did a great job, and very briefly, but I'm going to just ask you, if there, of all the things that you mentioned, could you pick out one or two that you really would want to highlight as far as what I know you want all of them, but to happen between now and the next time we get together?
Between now and the next time we get together, I think what my ask would be is to have the Board of Education sponsor some sort of town hall meeting or some sort of more in-depth, thoughtful, considered opportunity for stakeholders to talk to you. It's pretty intimidating and a little difficult for families to come at this time. But when we adopted UC A to G, I don't think we've reflected on what that has meant to the population that I'm here to speak about. So that would be my one ask for tonight. And then everything else on number 7 in the LCAP.
Okay. Right. I'd like to make a motion that the board officers, following this evening's board officer elections, would please look at the calendar and put that on in the next 6 months.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a second? Second by Trustee Barrera. All those in favor, please vote. That recommendation passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you very much. Any other board member comments? Vice President Whitehurst-Payne.
This is really, I don't know why, but it has become a passion for me. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to interview a Dr. Jackie Thousand from Cal State U San Marcos and her husband, Dr. Rich, and Rich Villa. And it was very interesting chatting with them about special ed, where we came from, where we are right now, where we need to be going. And at some point, I'll make that video available so that you all can tap into some of the things that they were saying, because it's an issue that we haven't cracked the nutshell yet. We're still on the surface of dealing with it, but it has to be that we no longer think of students as special needs, but as children who have some needs, regardless to whether or not we've identified them with some special need. I mean, all children have needs, and we need to figure out how we can supply those needs for the children. So I'll be sharing that with you too.
Thank you. I'll look forward to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Dr. Michael McQuarrie.
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge you regarding the once a year celebration you have and where you bring your staff forward and highlight good practices. It really is a good practice in and of itself. And I know that at our Vision 2030 workshop, Trustee Barrera talked about let's have world-class teachers. I think we really need to expand that to include, we need world-class employees, classified and certificated, and I think that what you've been doing in highlighting the best practices of your staff is an excellent example of how we can move forward.
And I would say we do have some world-class classified employees. Thank you.
That's true. Thank you very much. Trustee Barrera?
Yeah, I wonder if we could get maybe just a quick response from the superintendent or Sarah to some of the recommendations that Maura. Yeah.
I know Sarah and I discussed these, so would you like to come up? Sarah Ott is our Executive Director of Special Education.
Taking notes. Do I sit?
Yep, staff. Wherever you decide. Your choice. Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Hit the little button. Yeah.
Yes, so Maura and I meet monthly and talk about some of the actions items and how we can improve. As you know, this is my 4th month, I believe. So I've been looking and working with staff on things that previous administration had planned to address some of these issues, as well as new things and ways to work with our new team. So one of the main points that we've been talking a lot about is meaningful graduation and the A through G track and pathways and CCTE and how we can support all students having access to those. So we have kind of a committee meeting with, we used to call Office of Secondary, Cheryl Hiblin's office.
Innovation.
Thank you, Innovation, Office of Innovation. Just next month in January on kind of our action steps to move forward in that area.
Great.
So that was one of the topics that we've been looking at.
Do you anticipate when you're going to come to the board with some of those?
Some recommendations from that group meeting together?
I haven't thought about it, but we talked about meeting in January, and then we can think about when we can bring it to board, absolutely.
Yeah, great.
In the next couple months.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Good.
Thanks, Sarah. I think that the recommendations are right on track. You said Cindy Martin could have said this. I don't know which one you meant, the first bullet or one of them, but.
Leveraging.
What's that? Leveraging. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Equity at the heart.
There you go. There you go. Leveraging master schedules with equity at the heart of decision making. I think the theme to what you're recommending here is in alignment with what we believe the work that Deanne was leading and now Sarah is leading is a much fuller integration with special education services and supports being really integrated at the school site with the principal leading the work alongside the area superintendent. It's not separate and apart or different. There's not a different policy for expectations for graduation. The board has been clear. Now we're implementing and designing a way to do it that's systemic. And while we do that, we see where it's working for some and not for others, but we don't go back on our expectations. It's about how do we put the right supports in place and become systemic about it.
Great, thank you very much. We will now hear item H2, the District English Learner Advisory Committee, or the DLAC, semi-annual update to the board. Please remember that you have up to 10 minutes, you don't have to use all 10 minutes if you don't want, to present your report. Please set the timer for 10 minutes. You may begin.
Good evening, Board of Education, Superintendent. First, I want to congratulate President Kevin Beiser and Dr. McQuarrie for your re-election. Okay, so for 2018 to 2019, we met with OLA, and this is our collective outcome for the year. To collaborate with the Office of Language Acquisition and Family Engagement to understand how to support all English learners toward a meaningful graduation. Also increase our efforts to address equity and access barriers for English learners in academics and social-emotional learning, and also increase meeting attendance and participation. Okay, so this is part of one of our general meeting where we had a group of students performing a dance. That was a way to attract the parents because we don't have a lot of parents attending our general meetings. So also because we don't have a big attendance of our parents, so the district, the DLAC with OLA, we decided on providing maybe the summary reports that will be shared with the ELACs, will be shared also with the EL coordinators per site. As far as the data for the English learners, we have about 21,086 English learners. And about the long-term English learners, we have about 3,354 long-term English learners in our district. So I'm going to share with our concern. How I have been sharing that for the past presentation. So our concern as a parent is the ELD. So how can we make sure that the ELD is taking place per site? How can we make sure that every English learner is getting a daily ELD? And for that, so the English learners must learn English and master grade level academic content taught in English. Therefore, English learner students need additional layers of support and specialized program designed specifically for them. So the question, just like I mentioned, do all the English learners receive dedicated and integrated ELD? For that, we recommend the Board of Education and Superintendent to redouble their efforts by establishing a consistent accountability system to ensure that every English learner from K to 12 is receiving a daily ELD instruction while holding all our English learner students to the same high expectation outlined in the Common Core state standards. DLAC is also asking to create an ELD accountability system to make sure that the ELD is taking place and monitor the situation to ensure that all schools are providing a daily ELD. And because the parents are partners in the children's education, families also want a full transparency on the instructional support provided for the English learners. Parents also want to know about the progress their child is making as they learn English. How might we create cohesion across the system? We want to ensure that all students are well supported and get what they need and deserve. DLAC and OLA, last time when we had a meeting, we decided together to create a form, maybe to put it on the website. So we welcome all the basically wherever, like the parents, if they are happy with the instruction, if they are not, so they share their thought on the ELD and other services that are provided to their kids. Maybe I should, yes. So here there is the reclassification data. And according to the 2016-2017, we had about 4,120. And as far as 2017-2018, we have about 3,535 students who were approved the reclassification. I want to share with you also the load, language other than English. So we have about 20 languages, and we have about 2,757 students that they took the test. And as you can see, we have 29% that they were advanced, 30% proficient, 21% basic, 17% below basic, and also we have 3% far below basic. So according to we are pleased to see this data, but if you remember the first slide, I have shared the number of the English learners. We have about 21,000, and here we have only 2,000. So I think we should encourage more the language other than English off campus. Okay. So I want also to share with you how to bridge the gap between schools and get student-centered coaching cycle support that focus on English learners and school that don't. So what we have seen, that this is according to our information as a parents. So with a limited number of English language instructional resource teacher and the student center coaching circle happening in designated schools, and also the principal, because they are overwhelmed with the work, we are very concerned because what is happening in one school is not happening in other schools. And for that, DLAC is asking for equality and equity in serving English learners' needs. How can we ensure that what is happening at one specific school is happening across the district? And despite the number of the English learners per school, which means a school with a small population of English learners or large population of English learners, we believe that every English learner must be treated with respect and get the support needed to thrive. On another hand, according to the research, parents' involvement at home has more impact on children than parents' involvement in school activities. And for that, the DLAC is asking for effective programs to assist parents in creating a home environment that fosters learning and provides support and encouragement for their children's success. Another concern of the DLAC is how is the district supporting English learners with the social emotional learning, with political issues at the border, with the Muslim ban, with the increase in discrimination, with the racism and the anti-Islam sentiment. How will the district build a climate of safety for students and families? How will school address the fears of immigrant students? Are the counselors well trained to support the students? How will values of peace be taught and emphasized in each classroom? DLAC believes that the district is ethically obligated to ensure that all students have an equal opportunity to learn and grow in an environment free from discrimination, harassment, aggression, violence, and abuse. For that, we recommend for more PDs on emotional intelligence, social emotional competencies, and cultural awareness for all district and staff. We heard in some of the meetings here that there is a possible cut next year. So the DLAC is very concerned about the district financial situation and believe that despite the proposed cuts, English learners should continue to be a priority. We want protection for English learners to ensure that OLA continue to provide the necessary support and does not reduce services to English learners as we face financial pressures. We believe also that fewer staff, services, and support at school site combined with fewer administrator and resource teacher is not providing the needed quantity, quality, and consistency of programs and instruction every English learner needs to move toward English proficiency and content mastery. I have another concern about also the ELAC, and so we don't have a lot. According to the data that I got from last year, we still have a problem with the number of functioning ELAC per school, and also the ELAC that are associated, enrolled into the SSC.
Thank you. Please submit any other concerns to the superintendent, and feel free to copy the school board trustees on that if you didn't have the opportunity to get to it tonight. Or as you know, as other issues present themselves in the future, please communicate so that we can investigate and identify possible solutions going forward. We do have one public speaker. Citizen, you have 2 minutes.
Is that yours? So my concern is about the process that's being used to put children in the English Learner Program. Parents can't get their kids out of the English language program when clearly the services do not benefit their children. I'm talking to parents that speak perfect English. They're professionals. They have college degrees, master's degrees. That is a bilingual child. It's not an English learner child. And yet, this system has no way for staff to help these parents who do not want these services for their children and want them out. There's no way to do it. They just get sucked into the black hole. The staff plays dumb. The parents are sent in circles. Now, it's very nice that she said that they put some forms on the website. Well, there needs to be another form that allows parents to elect their children out. I've been through this process and how it's set up. And if you have a Hispanic name, it's very possible you're going to end up as an English language learner. And don't tell me that the children of a person that's a teacher in San Diego Unified School District is an English learner. So there's something wrong with the way they're being classified. And when I see these 3,000 kids that are long-term English learners, the superintendent has failed those children. There's no way you can't teach a child to read and speak English in a couple years. Because you do it with the kids at Longfellow and you do it with the kids at Language Academy. I watched them. Kids that spoke no Spanish. And in 6 months, they're singing and they're chattering away in Spanish. So why aren't the children that are learning English getting that same type of service? And all I can say is it's a breakdown in what your superintendent is doing. So when there are parents that have master's degrees and speak perfect English, they have to have a way to get out of that program if it doesn't benefit their children.
Thank you for your comments. Any board member comments or questions? Trustee Barrera?
Yeah, thank you, President Beiser. I wonder again if we could have some response from Superintendent Martin and from Teresa and Sandra.
I actually misspoke when you asked for response to the CAC recommendation. I forgot we actually designed a report tonight that's coming up F3 on the agenda, and that report is designed to answer both of these presentations. So, Sarah, I apologize I brought you up because you're about to come up and give a full response, and so is Sandra and Teresa, but it just happens to be agenda is at F3. Do you mind waiting until then? Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
That applies to both of these presentations?
Yes.
So I'll hold my questions until then.
Yes.
Fantastic.
All
right, moving right along.
The LCAP update for this evening. We do monthly LCAP updates on certain goals, and so English Learner and Special Education update, we timed with the Community Advisory Committee reports tonight so they could have a full discussion.
Good.
Great. And seeing as how somebody has a flight to catch, I'd like a motion on item I2 and I3. This is an action item. Is there a motion on I2 and I3? We have a motion from Dr. Whitehurst Payne on item I2 and I3. Is there a second? We have a second from Dr. McQuarrie. Now we'll have the presentation of these items. This is from the auditor. And so item I2 and item I3 are dealing with the external auditor annual financial statements for fiscal year 2017 and 2018.
Good evening, and thank you for that nice introduction. Appreciate it. My name is Dan McAllister, and I have chaired the audit committee for this district for the last 14 and a half years. And I'm pleased to bring you tonight the findings of our committee as regards the audit that was conducted this past year for the past year. And with me tonight is Matt Nethaway, who is the CPA in charge of the audit for this district this year. And he is here to answer or address any questions that you might have after I give my report. And so with that said, I'd like to render this report to you. The Audit and Finance Committee was asked to review the external audit report conducted by Crowe Horwath for 2017-18 fiscal year. The audit firm issued an unmodified opinion, which means that they believe the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the district. Between January and December 2018, the committee was provided with periodic progress reports and external and internal audits. Of the 3 years prior audit findings, 2 have fully addressed and solutions been implemented, and the remaining item was carried over to 2017-18 to this current audit report. The external audit report for 2017-18 discussed 6 findings, one of which is recurring regarding ASB accounts. ASB accounts seem to visit us every year with some sort of concern, but it's something that students, as well as all of us, can take very seriously because it is the students' money, and we want to make sure it's all present and accounted for at the end of the day. Very good practices, we think. The district, I note, has moved in the positive direction of trying to do more education for officers of ASB roles in schools, and we think as an audit committee that that is really something that has been wanting for a long time, and it's something that finally is taking shape under the guidance of the superintendent and the finance people here at the district. So that's very positive. But in particular, with respect to the findings regarding ASB accounts, the committee continues to express concern with the number of findings in that area. However, it is pleased, as I said, with the response to these findings by the Finance Division staff. The District Controller's Office has implemented multiple training classes over the past few years, and updated resource materials for school staff and students are being added to the district's webpage for easy reference. We hope the students will find these of interest and access as well. And if they don't, it's important that you let the audit committee know that, so at least we can bring that to your attention until we get it right. But it is moving in the right direction. The committee would like to express its concern with the district's total net position, which was negative $397.82 million for the year ending June 30th. This is a significant increase due to the first-time recognition and reporting requirements in accordance with new accounting standards of the liability for post-retirement health care benefits known as other post-employment benefits, or OPEB. This is something that is being faced by not only all 42 public school districts in the county of San Diego, but all districts not only in California but across this nation, as well as municipalities, counties, cities, whomever have post-employee employment benefits, and there are a lot. So it's not something that's isolated to this district. It's something that is ongoing. And it's something which does call to attention the need for more attention. And expenditures for CalSTRS, CalPERS, and OPEB are likely to continue to increase to address unfunded liabilities, and the committee recommends that this district look for solutions to be able to fund these liabilities on both a short-term and long-term basis. So I think it's imperative that we look harder at this issue and try to come up with a game plan that will address not only the long-term things, which are easier to not address, but the short-term items as well. The committee stresses the importance of maintaining strong reserve balances and would ideally like to see it 5 or 6% versus the 2% that is commonly thought to be a reasonable number. I don't think you can ever have too much in the way of reserves. and it's important because things happen. We know that. But currently, the district reserve is at a minimum suggested level of 2%, and if there is growth in that area, it will be positive for the long run. On Thursday, December 6th, the committee unanimously agreed to recommend that your board accept and approve the independent auditor's report for 2017-18 and concurs with the recommendations contained in the audit findings. We'd be happy to address any questions that you might have. I want to thank the board, the superintendent, and the staff for pulling together to assist in this effort every year. It's very important that it be done, and it's very important that it be accurate. And that everything be laid out on the table because there's only one way to improve, and that's first and foremost to know what needs to be improved before we tackle those kinds of things. So I want to thank you for your attention, and should you have questions, we'd be happy to try.
Thank you. We're also receiving the presentation on the external auditor financial and performance audit reports for Proposition S and Z for 27-18 also at this time. We're taking both because I received a text at the last minute to take both of those items. And so is Matt Nethaway or Arthur No here to also chime in? Thank you very much. And then after your comments, we do have one public speaker, and then we'll listen to board comments or questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Also included in your packet is the statutorily required performance audit and financial statement audit for the district's bonds. Both of those reports do issue unmodified opinions on both the financial statements themselves, as well as, you can tell, the very lengthy and extensive procedures related to the performance audit. I will tell you that our firm works very closely with your Citizens Oversight Committee, meet with them several times a year, first to start talking in terms of planning the engagement and what's important and relevant to the community and to that committee, and then ultimately to bring the results back and share the results with them. And we have conducted all of those meetings at this point in time.
Okay, and so for our viewers at home or people that may be listening to this report, not kind of understanding what does unqualified mean, or in terms of the audit on the bond program, if that were say a letter grade, would that be an A+?
So that's the unmodified opinion is the best type of opinion you can get.
So a teacher or the general public might consider that an A+ report card for the audit?
Sure.
Okay, great. Sure. For both audits?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. I just want to make sure, because auditors have a certain language and definition of vocabulary to describe the results of the audit and findings or no findings and all that stuff. And I think it's important that in our transparency with the public that we're making sure that we're communicating in a way that they can understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this point in time, we do have one public speaker on item I3. Citizen, you have 2 minutes. Thank you, Dan McAllister, Chair of the Audit and Finance Committee. Thank you very much, sir.
So I go to a lot of the audit committee meetings so I can try and see where the money is. And one of my concerns has been the associated student body money. And so I'm looking at this external auditor report, which is about that thick, and it's on page 24. And there is $6 million, almost $7 million in assets, and it says it's student body money. So I want to know why the students aren't getting reports about this. Like, why has this money been in savings for so long? Where is the letter that says this money should be in savings? For example, a scholarship. There was a scholarship, it was sitting there for like 5 years and the kids never got this money, and yet the donor that gave that money had said, I want this money to go $1,000 a year until it's depleted, and that didn't happen until I started asking questions. Some of these savings accounts were established in 1994, 1983, 2000. I'm sure these ASB students weren't even born then. So the money signers of these accounts are not students. And I haven't read the minutes, but when money's being moved in the student accounts, the students are supposed to be making those decisions. So you need to ask who at your school is signing these ASB accounts that your schools have. One San Diego High School scholarship has $150,000 in it. Point Loma has $191,000 in this money market account. With that kind of money, the ASB could establish buy a bunch of VR sets and have a room where kids could come in at lunchtime and do this VR stuff. I mean, wouldn't that be a fun thing for students? There's a lot of money there. And what they're going to tell you is, well, we can't give the students all that money. Well, the adults hid all that money from the students, and it's their money, so give it back.
All right, board member comments or questions?
One of my ongoing concerns, and I must commend the staff for putting together more training sessions and more workshops to work with students and staff, but one of the things that I really am optimistic that our staff will be able to do is to have a mandatory training for every ASB president, secretary, those who are engaged in the fiscal aspects of it. Every year, once you're selected as the president, you need to go through that training online, and there's a certificate that will follow that says, I have gone through the training, and all of these questions that are being raised are answered, so that you know the things to look for, you know the procedure, and you're graded on that, and it's documented that you know what you're supposed to be doing as the ASB president, etc. Because a part of the problem with the training is that you get the training and then you're gone before it turns around, the next person has to come in and get up to speed, versus if there's something online that you can go to now. Once you know you're the upcoming president, you can start learning now, figure out what it is you need to do all the research related to finance. You know how to go to the principal with the right questions, to the fiscal staff on your campus to ask the right questions, to know what it is you need to do. And when procedures are not followed, you will know it because you've signed off that you've gone through the training. Staff tells me that they're really working on implementing something like that, but I would like to see that documented.
In addition to that, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, I'd like to thank Mr. McAllister because he attends the ASB President's meeting. So having you, besides our training, having you go and speak to them, I don't know if our two students up here were here when Mr. McAllister came, but that's something that you've started to do as a part of our augmented training that we've been doing. We appreciate that. It makes a big impact on our kids to hear directly from you.
That's a good comment. Any other comments or questions? Trustee Barrera?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Matt. Appreciate your work. A couple of items that you identified, and I don't know if it's proper to have Greg or Debbie respond a little bit, but I wanted to ask a little bit about the identification of the liabilities first on retiree health. Do we have any staff response to that?
The OPEB. Mm-hmm. Greg or Debbie?
Would you like it explained first?
Please. Yes. Yes.
Matt, do you want to just touch
Well, I think that Mr. McAllister in his presentation did elaborate that it's the over $300 million in liability, and that is an encumbrance as a result of three things: CalSTRS and CalPERS, which we have no control over. It's the state that runs those, and then OPAB, which are any health care carryovers that we may provide as a bridge to retirees or other individuals before Medicare might kick in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair characterization of those liabilities, and historically you weren't required to recognize the actuarial projection of what that was going to cost the district into the future, and so the new accounting standard required that liability be reported in your government-wide financial statement, so it's not down at the fund level, your operating funds, it's at the government-wide financial statements. I will point out in the audit report on page 75 and then several pages after that there's some required supplementary information. Currently, there's only one column for the OPEB, and there's 4 columns for the pensions. Ultimately, those will end up being 10 columns long, and you'll start to see the trends over time as far as what the impact of those liabilities has been on the most recent years. And in the OPEB schedule as well as the pension schedules will actually show you the contributions made to OPEB or to the pensions on an annual basis as well as the liabilities.
Yeah, I think we're obviously familiar with the necessity under state law for the increased contributions to CalSTRS and CalPERS, and every year our budget and our budget in the out years includes the necessary contributions that we need to make. I think your identification of retiree health, though, is something that we haven't had a lot of discussion about. And if staff's not prepared right now to talk about that, that's fine. But at some point, I'd like to hear some response on that.
And I agree about the difference of the pension and the health care. And to add to that, I would just like a basic explanation to the public in terms of what is provided to retirees in terms of health care, and what is our cost for that. I'm not.
Well, that would be included with any staff comment or briefing that Richard just asked for.
Right.
And that might come forward at a future date.
Oh, okay, but is there, okay.
Unless Mr.
A general
McAllister has
statement
the
about
answer.
what we are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we?
Well, I think it would be wise to follow it down to the nth degree to find out exactly what we're talking about, long-term and short-term, near-term. And remember this, too, this is the first year this has been required for disclosure. So it's getting it out on the table so that people like you will be able to deal with these things and talk about them into the future. Some of the projections that have been used, not just here but other places too, don't really necessarily incorporate a lot of reality. Because 30, 40, 50 years down the road, market conditions change. If you issue pension obligation bonds, for instance, and you put all that money to work to fund up your pension liability, all of a sudden, if the market goes down, that's money lost. So your hope is that you manage this well on the short end and really work toward that ultimate goal of having enough to pay the promises that are made.
And Mr. McAllister, to what extent does this board have the ability to manage the funds in CalPERS and CalSTRS right now?
They are the ones that are chosen to administer these benefits, but they're not necessarily the ones that make all the contributions.
Right.
You make many of the contributions too.
Yeah.
But do we manage the funds at all?
I don't believe so.
No.
So hold on, just a second, Dr. Okay, go ahead.
I spoke to George Deere, who the person I had talked about on PERS, and he explained that for entities like PERS and this teachers' retirement system. For PERS, there are 7 members on the on the board, and the school districts statewide have 1 representative.
Yeah.
That person happens to be somebody in Northern California. The state groups have 1 representative.
Yeah.
The retirees have 1 representative. So those positions are defined. And they kind of make the decision to hire folks to oversee the purchase of bonds, et cetera, to ensure how much money is coming in or not coming in. And the thing that I learned from the committee is that there's something called a gap analysis. If their investments and their returns only bring in 65% and we need 75%, there's a gap. And so that's why it comes back to the district to say, okay, school district, there's a 10 points gap here that you're supposed to be addressing. And that's what's coming to us now for the first time, because I think we had assumed that once we have an employee, they retire, you go to STRS or you go to PERS and that's it. We're done with that piece of it. But now with this whole thing with GAP, and it's based upon a 40-year average, and you've got all these factors coming in that you were talking about. So it's a little bit more complicated than people realize, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I know that much.
I agree, and I just think what President Beiser was trying to clarify is we're not the city of San Diego, we're not the county of San Diego. We don't manage our own pension systems. We contribute to the state-managed pension systems, CalSTRS and CalPERS, according to the amount that we are legally obligated to contribute. And so we don't have general obligation bonds, pension obligation bonds, because they're not our pension systems. The state manages the pension systems and then tells us what our contribution needs to be. And And we know that, that became significant, that had significant impact on our budget over the last few years because our contributions went from 8.5% of payroll to 19, well, we'll hit 19% of payroll in a couple of years. And so we appreciate, the point that you're making, because what our contribution level is out of our control. And will be set by the, by CalPERS and CalSTRS or by the state legislature at any point in time. I think the the retiree health care benefits is something that we do negotiate with our unions, and it is something more under our control. And so I think it's something that's, again, in a presentation would be good to understand. The other point that I would just make in your recommendations, I think we would love to have a reserve, that would go from 2% to 5 or 6%. Of course, when the state is sitting on a $14.5 billion reserve, rainy day fund, and the argument that the state makes for having a reserve of that level is primarily about protecting schools against future economic impacts. That's where our reserve is. For our district to increase our reserves beyond 2% is a pretty clear decision that we would have to make about increasing class size, making cuts to student needs. It's simply an impossible goal, and I appreciate that the Audit and Finance Committee is laying out a goal. It's impossible for us to increase our reserve on the one hand and maintain the investments in our students that we need to make. And if there's an argument to school districts to increase their reserves, I think that argument, you're presenting that argument to us, and it's our responsibility then to present that argument to the state, which is if school districts are going to increase their reserves, there's only one place that money can come from, and it comes from the state's rainy day fund. So our reserves are sitting in that $14.5 billion that the state controls. I think to expect districts to increase our reserve levels when the state has $14.5 billion that's meant to help schools, weather storms, I think is an unrealistic. I appreciate the recommendation, but I think it's simply unrealistic that school districts are going to increase our reserves when that money is sitting there in the state's rainy day fund.
All right. Two quick suggestions.
Sure.
One is that I know STRS and PERS are available to conduct tutorials or presentations, and it might be helpful for the board to see a presentation from their staff on exactly what all of this means and who does what and who predicts what. A lot of it falls on actuaries who claim to have an exact science, but I think we all know it's not. So it would be helpful maybe to ask that they come down and talk with the board.
They have actually done that, and they've come and explained it, and it's been very clear.
Board workshop.
It's out of control. And the best comparison I have is to Social Security. People pay into Social Security and get a Social Security benefit. People who receive Social Security have to be aware that at some point it may not have enough money, or they may be cutting benefits or something, but there's nothing that the individual recipient of Social Security can do about it as an individual, and as a school district, we just have to pay whatever the state says we're going to pay. I understand that the financial people or Wall Street people, whoever, are looking at, okay, this is a potential liability of the district, but we are consistently paying whatever they require us to pay, and that's all we can do, and that's why, just to make another point, when they talked about all the increases in our funding in the last few years, a lot of it's been taken away by the state pension funds.
One more note, and that is, I was going to say to Mr. Barrera's comment, I understand the penalty nature of the excess, quote-unquote, excess reserve funds and how that hammer comes down quickly if it even approaches higher than 2%. But I also know the miracle of certain legislative abilities and legislators that are out there that might be willing to take this on to effect some change that would be positive for the benefit of the district and keeping proper reserves. So I'd be happy to work with whomever it is to see if that's possible, but I do suggest that that might be one remedy, or at least an effort to make it a remedy.
Trustee McQuarrie, Dr. McQuarrie.
Yeah, sure. I'd also want to thank Dan McAllister and Matt for the work that you do with our committee and with this district and on the internal audit effort to keep us financially sound. What came up at several discussions was ASB, and I'm wondering if we couldn't give our students here an opportunity to share a story or make some comments about that.
Hi, my name is Chris Stagner. I'm the ASB president for Patrick Henry High School. And on the matter of student knowledge about these, the accounts with ASB, I can say myself that I do not know enough about finances. And I would say that the only people in my ASB who are closest to qualified to manage that money would be the class treasurers and the ASB general treasurer. And I don't think that lack of knowledge is at the fault of anybody in this room, and I think some of these things just come from a school level. So I think what I would say is I think we should do more to reinforce at that school level that there needs to be more than just 4 or 5 people who have a general understanding of what's going on with the accounts and the financing, because I think as far as some students are concerned, it's just down to, yes, I will vote to motion or second like the expenditure of $10,000, and it's just as easy as that for some people. But I do want to thank you and thank everyone in this room for what you guys do for us as students, and thank you for suggesting that we be more informed. But I think that sometimes it just comes down to a school level, that there should be more done for the students to be more informed of what they're doing with their money and where that money's going.
And that's usually the role of the ASB advisor, is to create that kind of transparency and educating the members of ASB so that they're aware of all the different accounts and the expenditures for dances or spirit weeks or different kinds of field trips or activities. So I recommend that if your ASB, you don't feel like your ASB advisor is providing that, maybe try to get them to give your group at your school an update. Yeah. All right, this is an action item. Please vote on item I2, the External Auditor Financial Performance Audit Reports for Prop S and Z for the 2017-18 year, and item I3, the External Auditor Annual Financial Statements for 27-18, where the district has received an unqualified report for both of them, which is an A+ all around. Please vote. And that passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you very much for all your work, Mr. McAllister. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, with that, we move on to item J. This is the superintendent's consent agenda, pulling item J23 and J33 to be taken up at the end of the meeting. Do I have a motion? We have a motion from Dr. Evans. Is there a second? Second. We have a second from Trustee Barrera. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously. On to item C2. This is an action item. This is a resolution calling for full and fair funding of California's public schools. Is there a motion? We have a motion from Dr. Evans and a second from Dr. McQuarrie. Superintendent Martin, please present the item. You have 2 minutes. Just kidding.
Actually, this item is very much connected to what we were just discussing about funding. This was something that we worked in conjunction with SDEA during recent negotiations, and it's the resolution to, as the title says, call for full and fair funding, and there's several other districts in the state who have also passed such resolutions. It was SDEA Article 34, Revenue for Public Education, and we agreed that we would promote this and make a board resolution in support of this so that we can formally advocate for this level of funding. And it's aligned to research that we did a couple years ago about funding adequacy. Back then, when we looked at funding adequacy, there was a dollar amount, $350 million is what we determined at that time would be what we would consider. I think we stopped using the word adequate, but what we considered full funding for our schools at the time. And then since then, subsequent to our own internal research, we also saw the release of a new Getting Down to Facts study from from Stanford that was released recently that came up with, coincidentally, the same number that we came up with. Their research was much more scientific than ours, but it looks like ours worked out just fine. It was very much in alignment with the full study that came out from Stanford recently, and this resolution is in alignment with all of that, and it's not a new message for us. It's a consistent and stable message about when we say that we're delaying on equity, we delay on equitable funding and full funding. And although we agree with the formula, the local control funding formula is based on an equity-driven model. We have full agreement with that, but when you don't adequately fund an equitable formula, you delay delivering on equity to all students. And so this is in alignment with things that we've been talking about for many years here, and it's in alignment with what we just heard from our Audit and Finance Committee of what it takes and where we are with our reserves and the reserves at the state versus being put into use right here with our students now.
Thank you, Superintendent Martin. We have one public speaker, citizen. You are opposed. You have 2 minutes.
So since 2013, this district has seen millions and millions and millions of dollars poured into it, and you've squandered the money. You just squandered the money. I'm talking about millions of dollars. This resolution is just a political ploy to demand more money from working people, because the government has no money. It gets its money from the working people. So let me give you an example of waste. 700 people were on the medical insurance that shouldn't have been, okay? Teachers were claiming dependents that were receiving medical services that they didn't earn. And that, folks, is called fraud. So because the SDEA told the school district, well, we're agreed to an audit of the dependents, but you're not going to go after the money that those people received fraudulently. And so this school board, John Lee Evans and Beiser and Barrera, they all go, okay, let's just watch $4 million poured down the drain. In the meantime, we had our classified staff taking 5% pay cuts. So when these people tell you they need more money, look at how they've squandered money. They've taken our public land and just sold it. $51 million down into the black hole because 96% of it is salaries and benefits. So no, don't approve this resolution because this board wastes money. You give somebody a $30,000 raise for 3 years. From 2014 to 2017, a person gets $30,000 raise increase, and you guys are crying that you have no money. You have a lot of money, and you're taking it out of the hands of working people. And even more, you're taking it out of the mouths of your own classified workers who can't even afford buy food because you guys gave them a pay cut. And we've got a general counsel over here that wrote herself a nice contract that said, oh, if you guys do furlough days, they won't apply to me. She protected her billion-dollar salary.
Thank you. Board member comments or questions?
Just quickly to
Dr.
underline
Evans.
What Superintendent Martin said, I think it's quite amazing that this prestigious study by Stanford University that came up with a $20 billion budget shortfall coincides so closely with in 2014 when we said we had a $350 million shortfall. So all the time people talk about the increases that have happened through these years, we have had the same gap because the increases have not even closed that gap. And it's just kind of phenomenal that that $20 billion equates to about $350 million for San Diego Unified.
Good point. Please vote. And that resolution calling for full and fair funding of California's public schools passes unanimously 5-0. On to public participation. We have 3 non-agenda public speakers. Francine Maxwell, you have 2 minutes, followed by Candy Nieto. You have 2 minutes.
Martin Luther King said, the time is always right to do what's right. You sit on the dais and you talk about, as we come to a close of this year, our needs being met. You knew that Morris High School is in a community that is challenged. We have challenging community, a challenging set of students, challenging staff. Within these past 2 weeks, there was a challenge that 3 women couldn't meet. They're brand new administrators. You have a high challenged campus that had somebody come on there to fight a student because another 2 students were arguing and they called their friends out of class and they were going to jump, so this kid called their father. So some people are not trained generationally that it's not acceptable to come on a campus and try to fight a young man. So you had one officer show up. As a community, as a county, every day we want every officer to make it home safely. But we only had one that needed to show up to Morris. So once again, our wonderful men in blue and women in blue of Southeastern Division had to respond. So when we talk about Proposition YY and we get excited, I still haven't seen and heard yet or read where the new hiring is, that's going to not just have one man show up to Morris when there was chaos, that 3 women are ill-equipped to handle. That is the fault of your one employee, board trustees. The superintendent does not know what she's doing to give me 3 women at Morris that are incapable of handling a 6'4" young man. They have to call Southeastern Division. It's not right. So I want us to know that safety, when you talk about safety, please talk about my community. Safety. I need more than just cameras. I need bodies. I need real boots on the ground. So we're going to start to have a conversation in 2019 about the Home to School Compact. And in that conversation, we're going to hold community forums on the parent trigger, because I don't think that you're going to pay enough attention until we get District E parents, community members, clergy to begin to talk about that parent trigger again.
Thank you. Candy Nieto, you have 2 minutes, followed by Citizen.
Good evening, board members, superintendent. It's been a while since I stood in front of this board fighting for CBEC Community English program many years ago, but I'm standing before you now concerned about a program. As Mr. Beiser said, I provided community service for 43 years to the children of in early childhood education programs of San Diego Unified School District. Under Robin McCullough, I was hoping maybe we would finally become maybe a pre-K through 12 district. That hasn't happened yet. And I'm concerned about the cuts and the decimation of this program over the years. And so I notice it's in a budget. There's information. We've experienced over the last 8 years several cuts in our program. We went from 27 child development centers to 4. Those are working families, parents that are going to school who will no longer have services in our district. And so I have a concern that, now's the time for this district to stand up and become a pre-K through 12 district. And I wish and hope that that happens soon. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Citizen, you have 2 minutes.
So one more time, let's talk about how this school district hides the sexual abuse of children in this district. The Quality Assurance Office was supposed to be the solution, okay? I was reading some emails, and the San Diego Police Department assured the chief of police, the San Diego Police Department police chief, that the Quality Assurance Office was going to take on this problem and that children were going to be protected. And you know what? It hasn't happened yet. Instead, the Quality Assurance Office has caused more problems, embroiled people in lawsuits, arrested fathers that are trying to get their children the special education services that they deserve. So I'm going to keep bringing it up because the superintendent has never addressed it. I read the emails. She said she was crying. Tears are coming down my face. And yet she hasn't solved it. It's one thing to do it in little emails to a few parents. It's another thing to do it publicly and take it on and change the mindset that it's circle the wagons when we're talking about the abuse of children, okay? We had the teacher at Crawford, sexual predator, having sex with a 15-year-old boy in the classroom 100 times. Yeah, during school time, guys. Same thing at Lincoln. Same thing at Lincoln, sexual predator teacher. And the superintendent allows it to continue. She doesn't do anything to address it.
That concludes non-agenda public testimony. On to item E1, the information reports on closed session actions. Is there anything to report out? Andra Green?
Yes, we have 2 settlements to report out. The first one is in the case entitled San Diego Unified School District versus Rep West Insurance Company. That's U.S. District Court case number 18-CV-01532. In that case, the board approved a settlement with a vote of 5-0 to accept payment in the amount of $2.7 million from Rep West in order to resolve our claims for bad faith and future liabilities. And the second case is the Voice of San Diego for Open Government, Voice of San Diego and San Diego's for Open Government versus San Diego Unified. That's case San Diego Superior Court case number 37-2018-00026433. And the result of that case is something that will come forward at this board meeting in the packet of revised bylaws and administrative regulations, and we have agreed with the plaintiffs to extend our email retention policy to a period of 2 years.
So so the first was where we're actually going to be receiving $2.7 million in a settlement.
Yes, that's correct.
And then the second one is an agreement where we're going to go to a 2-year email retention policy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now let's go on to item E2. This is
I have a public comment.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't see that you had put in a speaker slip to speak on item E1. Citizen, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, so actually this is a little bit better by Andrew Green to actually report out on some settlements. It used to be that this school board would bring forward settlements, and they were written so that even people that have hearing losses and are deaf can understand what's being said, because it's very difficult to understand what she's saying when she's reporting out. So a written report would be very helpful for those of us that have hearing losses. Tens of millions of dollars have been approved in settlement agreements that have never been reported in open session. The agenda, the closed session agenda, is actually hidden from the public. There are 2 separate agendas, so you cannot see that the actual public meeting began at 3:30, and that the public has the right to go speak at 3:30 to make public comment. People don't know that because there are 2 separate agendas. Now I look at the city of San Diego, and they state public meeting, and then they say closed session, public comment on closed session, and then they adjourn and go into closed session, and then they come back into open session and they report out. But you guys hide that because you have these 2 separate agendas, and if people don't understand this district, they never know that. So that's just another way that the district hides its actions. The lawsuit by the Voice of San Diego, that was another attempt by the superintendent to hide things. She wanted to eliminate all the emails, delete emails after just 6 months. After just 6 months. Why? Because there's wrongdoing in those emails. I've read them. And if you delete them, you delete the evidence of the wrongdoing. That's what it's about. So, great that you reported it, but you need to put it in writing so that people with disabilities can understand it, and put it in open session and put the settlement agreements out there so people don't have to try to get them from Jeff Day, because that'll take forever.
Thank you. Any board member comments or questions with regard to the report on closed session items? This is an information item only. All right, seeing none, we'll go on to item E2. This is another information item as administrative assignment. Superintendent Cindy Martin, please report out.
Thanks, President Beiser. These are management appointments this evening. Lead principal for San Diego High School, Franny Del Carmen Aguilar, and program manager for Restorative Justice Practices, Michelle Ferrer. Sorry, I didn't pause long enough for that applause. The program manager, Restorative Justice Practices, is Michelle Ferrer.
Congratulations. Now we move on to item E through. This is another information item, the Associated Student Body ASB President's Report. At this time, I'd like the ASB student representatives to the board to introduce themselves. Please tell us about yourself and what's going on at your school, both academically and socially. Chris Stagner is the ASB president at Patrick Henry High School, and Nadine Aquino is the ASB president at Mesa High School. Chris, would you like to begin?
Yes. I'd like to thank the board for inviting us here tonight, and I appreciate you guys letting us have a voice as students. For Patrick Henry, our football and baseball stadiums are currently in the final stages of renovation, and the construction of our new building that will encompass math classes and other subjects will hopefully be fully functional come second semester. These changes mark a new frontier for Patrick Henry, one in which we plan to move all of our classes that are in the bungalows currently into the new building or the other vacant classrooms that come with that.
With air conditioning.
Yes, finally. We are also in the process of installing new Pixelot sports cameras in our gym and football stadium, and I believe these have been used by other schools in the district before. But these cameras were sold to us through our ASB from an outside company, and they come with the software that allows for the live streaming and logging of footage for any events held in the respective stadiums, as well as automatic ball tracking technology, which allows for hands-free use. And the school can choose to take some of the portions of the memberships that cost money for people who, say, if you have a relative who lives even across the country, they can watch the games live, and they have to pay only a small monthly fee, and the school can choose to take as much of that as they'd like for their own funds. As for our ASB, we've had many successes with our fundraising events on campus. Last month, myself and another student worked with a local radio station to host a toy drive. On top of that, our school hosts 4 to 5 blood drives per year, all of which tend to have great turnouts. And in our most recent canned food drive, our school raised over 800 cans for less fortunate families in the community. That's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your report, Christopher. All right, next we have Nadine Aquino, the Mira Mesa High School ASB president.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nadine Aquino, and I'm so excited to be representing Mira Mesa High School as their ASB president. So in regards to the school, our counseling team recently concluded hosting daily college application workshops in our media center for the seniors. Being a senior myself, I attended these workshops and received tremendous help in completing my own applications. Last month, one of our administrators presented us with Channel 933's Big Thank You activity, which we also participated in last year. This involved allowing students, staff, and parents to write any supportive or appreciative messages to those involved in our troops, which were to be delivered through Channel 933. This year, our school contributed a total of 8,021 letters, which beat our previous total of 3,570 letters.
Wow.
On November 12th, we had a large groundbreaking ceremony for our music department's new building. During the ceremony, our band played a few pieces to showcase everyone's excitement for this upcoming development. Superintendent Martin gave an inspiring speech with our principal before officially breaking ground, and I'd like to thank you for helping our music department finally make headway in this project.
Yay.
2 weeks ago, we hosted an anti-bullying campaign known as the Sit With Us program. In this campaign, Hollister teamed up with the app Sit With Us, and they go to different schools willing to have them. ASB members and other students set up the stage, and when Hollister arrived, we helped them set up their equipment for the lunchtime activity. And in this activity, students were encouraged to write a kind message on a sticky note, which was collectively placed on this whiteboard, and it was meant to promote the spreading of positivity. As for ASB, just last week we hosted the San Diego Blood Bank in our media center for our second blood drive of the year, and we had a great turnout as many students participated, and there were few vacant spots available to donate blood. With winter break approaching, students tend to get stressed since teachers usually give them tests around this time, and ASB is having a spirit dress-up week prior to break in an attempt to relieve this stress. We will continue to encourage students to keep their grades up and to finish strong. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Very good job to both of our student ASB presidents. I really appreciate your guys' participation here, and then I'll also invite you to comment on any items as you already have. Thank you very much for your input. Now we move on to item E4 on the agenda. This is the...
I had public comment.
Oh, I apologize. I'm just not used to having public speakers on this item. I apologize. Citizen, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, so when you do these ASB reports, it would be really great if you could show the finances. So I'm looking at this external audit, and it said total assets, $6.8 million. That's a lot of money. And so I asked the auditor, why is it also listed as a liability? And the auditor said, well, the school district can't spend that money because it belongs to the students. I said, so you're telling me the students have over $6 million in the savings accounts? He said, yeah. So when you do your ASB reports, ask these people. There's something called money signers, and these money signers are controlling those accounts that have the students' money in it, the ASB money. But those money signers one's a principal and one's a finance clerk. So there are forms that tell the students who are signing for these bank accounts. The bank accounts are J.P. Morgan Chase, and there's so much money. You need to ask, where are the letters that say that you can have $150,000 in that savings account? Where are the letters that say there can be $205,000 in that savings account? If the money belongs to the students, then the people that are controlling these accounts need to tell the ASB presidents where that money is, because this guy was just giving a whole bunch of great ideas about streaming football games and stuff like that. They can figure out ways to spend the money. Tech equipment's expensive, and you have to maintain it. So let's get a report. Let's get the ASB presidents to find out who's signing for all this money. Let's see what those accounts are. They have a right to see all of these bank statements. And who moved them anyway? Because it has to be approved by a student, and the students didn't move that money. So let's find out.
All right, so that concludes the information report, item E3. On to item E4, Superintendent Information Report. Superintendent Cindy Martin.
Thank you, President Beiser. Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, you often talk about how it takes a whole community to raise a student and to have a student be a whole child, a complete individual, and what that actually looks like, and the responsibility of the school district and the responsibility of the entire community. And so when we talk about that, sometimes we express it in terms of, we say students are more than a test score. That isn't the overall product. It's this whole individual that has access to the arts education and can think creatively and scientifically, and they're prepared academically to make a contribution and a difference in the world, and it's something that we all very much believe in. So for my update tonight, I want to talk about one of the ways we help children develop as whole and complete individuals is through one area of emphasis is fitness and wellness, and how important that is in producing our whole child. It starts at the elementary school with our wellness committees that are at every single school with a wellness lead, and great programs like Girls on the Run. If you haven't participated in that, that's an example of health and wellness at the youngest grades. And then it extends to our high schools with scholarship level athletics. And so tonight I think it's important that I recognize some of the incredible student athletes that we have. Our football teams from Lincoln and San Diego High who will be representing us all at the state championships this weekend. We're all, of course, just as proud of the CIF San Diego champions, Morse, and runners-up Kearney and Mira Mesa. Mira Mesa? Yes. This has actually been a historic season for San Diego Unified teams, and I think that really speaks to the quality of our athletic programs that we have and what we're building. So I want to just thank the team, and especially our Director of Athletics, Scott Giusti, all the athletic directors and the work that they're doing under Scott's leadership. A vote of gratitude for him and that work. Another way that we support our students as they grow into well-rounded individuals is through our supports of the arts. And this month we have outstanding arts and music events across the city as part of the holiday season. So if you don't know about some of these shows, you should check in with your local schools, because in fact students from 9 of our schools recorded songs to appear on KUSI. If you haven't been watching our students singing on that and offering that to the whole San Diego community. The Sarah High School Band also performed at December Nights last weekend, and this week students from E.B. Scripps Elementary are going to perform with Barry Manilow at his Christmas concert at Viejas Arena. We are all around the city spreading the message of arts and arts integration and how important it is. And in fact, our Visual and Performing Arts Department describes this mission of a well-integrated arts approach as transforming lives through the arts. And we truly believe that. We're transforming lives and transforming the city by showing our commitment and letting our students be the messengers of our great arts integration. Last week, in adding to arts and the support of the arts on a more somber note, I'd like to point out that last week our state lost someone who had dedicated his life to making that commitment to the arts a reality. Stephen Gotthold passed away on December 5th at the age of 77. He had served as a director of choral activities at Whittier College from 1977 to 2003, and also served as president of the Southern California American Choral Directors Association and as an officer in the Choral Conductors Guild, and was a host, adjudicator, and clinician for the Southern California Vocal Association for more than 30 years. Fortunately, for those of us here tonight, he was also the father of our current County Superintendent of Education, Dr. Paul Gotthold. I would ask everyone here tonight to keep Dr. Gotthold and his family in your thoughts as we prepare for the coming year with optimism and hope. We should always remember that some of our community has suffered losses this past year. It's our job to reach out to them with support and understanding so that we can all move forward together. So I extend my sincere condolences to Dr. Paul Gotthold, our county superintendent, on the loss of his father. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Cindy Martin. Now we move on to item E5, board information reports. Dr. McQuarrie.
Yep. I would like to take this opportunity to again thank Judge Judith McConnell and our ASBA President of Presidents, Jerry Yang, for administering my oath of office. Teaming a high school student leader of leaders with the Court of Appeals Judge of the 4th Appellate District to participate in a major civic event exemplifies the effort that we are making to promote civic learning in our schools, and it highlights a major priority to reinvigorate civic education in our programs. So it's in an effort to highlight best practices, we are now, the Civic Learning Partnership was the partnership of educators and judges and attorneys throughout the state of California. They're now accepting applications for schools who are doing outstanding projects and efforts. So there is an opportunity to identify best practices. In the past, the winning best practice would receive, the school would receive a visit from a Supreme Court justice. So we've had that at one of our schools in the past. And we would have an opportunity to do that. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the Civic Learning Partnership application. If you have a best practice, submit it, and maybe you could greet a Supreme Court justice in the near future.
Trustee Barrera?
Yeah, just really quick, I'd like to congratulate Franny Del Carmen on being named the new lead principal at San Diego High School, and it's a return home for Franny. Yes, absolutely. She's a great Caver alum herself, and I think she's going to be very excited to see. I was at the pep rally today, and the students and the coaches and the staff are flying up to Sacramento on Friday to play their championship game on Saturday. So Franny is coming home to San Diego High, and she's going to see great Caver spirit when she starts to lead that school. So congratulations to Franny.
Thank you. Dr. Evans?
Yeah, just quickly, I enjoyed the reports by the ASB members, and I think this fits with our bond programs. Our Mira Mesa president mentioned about the music buildings that are going up, and this is a case of a school who already had a fantastic program, and now we're building facilities to follow up with it. Same thing had happened at Patrick Henry. It had a great music program, nowhere to play, and now they have a great facility. And I also remember you're talking about the old bungalows. I substituted one day in an old bungalow at Patrick Henry High School. And that was in 1989. So it's pretty old.
Yeah, the bungalows are ancient, and we're looking forward to, it's very challenging during construction, and I share that, but I believe on the other end, it will be a much better school.
And one other thing, really quickly, I was at the Madison Cluster meeting last night. It's an example of where they're forming partnerships with the community. They got a community foundation, which has donated money for their community gardens. But we have gardens starting up and going down all the time. What they are doing is providing all the tools and facilities, but also they're providing a master gardener who goes in and works with the teachers, and they have grants to do it on a sustainable basis. But the kids, they had a video. The kids were, growing the food in the garden, and then they had a cooking competition, and they took all of the different foods from the garden, and they were using all this curriculum for learning how to cook. And they said that the curriculum they used for the 6th graders to learn how to cook was the same curriculum they're using for students at Stanford who also don't know how to cook.
Vice President Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
I want to give a shout out to Morse, first of all, for their coming in, and to Lincoln. We're going to go all the way. Do I hear that? We're going to go all the way? We're going all the way. I'm excited and really proud of them, proud of the coaches who've worked with them and the students who've given their heart and soul to this effort, and we look forward to victories from them coming back. And I also just want to say, last night we had a wonderful meeting at Lincoln, the Lincoln cluster, and got into some interesting topics that we'll be bringing forward for further discussion. And Morse will be having this cluster meeting next week. So.
Great, thank you very much. For my board report, I would just like to again thank my husband Dan Mock for swearing me in for my 3rd term, and I'd like to thank the 216,657 voters that voted for me, which, as Dr. McQuarrie had mentioned, is a record number of votes for any member of the Board of Education in the history of San Diego Unified. And then that was the final count after all the ballots were counted was 72.94%. So thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody's support over the years, and capping it off with this reelection is just really, really, really important so that we can keep working and doing the things that we need to do to support the school district and keep listening. And so with public comment, we have Citizen, you have 1 minute.
So I went to the archives and I pulled the old agendas, and there were no board reports. Board reports should be eliminated, especially since you decided to move public comment to the end of meetings. The impropriety of using public resources for political campaigning is well-established law. You just listened to Kevin Beiser talk about his election, all people have voted for him. The current school board has given itself at public expense a soapbox so they can promote themselves to the voters. These reports add no value whatsoever to the business of the school district. Their reports just increase the length of the meeting. The agenda item is so vague that they can use it to say anything they want, and that's not what the Brown Act is about. It's not about you guys patting each other on the back and complimenting each other and all their little political mumbo-jumbo that Mike McQuarrie and John Lee Evans and Kevin were going through. Eliminate it. It just extends the meeting, and really you don't say anything that's much interest.
All right, that leaves us to item F2. This is an action item. Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendation for the proposed 2019 summer school program and extended school year? Do I have a motion? We have a motion from Vice President Dr. Sharon Whitehurst-Payne. Is there a second? Second. We have a second from Dr. Lee Evans, John Lee Evans. Is there any comment or questions on this proposal? Seeing none, please vote. That motion carries unanimously, 5-0. On to item F3. This is an information item on Vision 2020, Quality Schools in Every Neighborhood, LCAP goal number 3, Quality Leadership, Teaching, and Learning. This is a report on students with disabilities and English learners. Superintendent Martin, please present the item. This is an information item.
Thank you, President Beiser. I'm going to invite the team up here. This is where I said we are going to be responding to the earlier advisory committee reports, and this is a tradition that we started a couple years ago about having an LCAP update. This is LCAP Goal 3, which focuses on teaching and learning, and this one is a report specifically on students with disabilities and English learners, so we're combining both of these updates tonight on these two areas tonight by the team. And if you'll introduce yourselves so folks know who you are, we can begin our presentation.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ott, the Executive Director of Special Education.
Sandra Cephas, Director of the Office of Language Acquisition.
And Teresa Laskowski, Instructional Support Officer. So we'd like to thank you for inviting us here tonight to report on Vision 2020 and our collective work together. So we'll begin. I have the clicker. So just to be clear about our district goal is to widen the sphere of student success for all learners. Our principals have undertaken this, is that better? Our principals have undertaken this task by writing strategic plans, and in those strategic plans they have identified areas of improvement, and you can see through this display that the areas of improvement have been around teaching and learning, Tier 1 instruction, safe and collaborative, and they align with the Marzano work that we do as well as assessment. So our work is complementary to that, to those goals as a district. I want to reiterate that this has been very courageous for our leaders to undertake this, to really dig down deep and analyze their root causes for some of these I guess the data and our student growth, or how we can continue to impact the growth of the students who may not be making the gains at the same time as their counterparts. So we're working on remedying that as a collective. So our district leaders as well as our site leaders have undertaken this pathway of identifying the English learners and students with disabilities and thinking about how we can make improvements at the site level and also with district support. So we're working on a guaranteed viable curriculum, and those are professional learnings and supports where schools look at the supports and resources they have for students, and they think about how we might design differentiation opportunities by looking at the units that they've designed and teach to at the lesson level and provide supports and resources that are aligned with the Common Core state standards and our critical concepts. High quality Tier 1 instruction is always a realm in which we know we can make adjustments, and I think that the tweaks that we've been making and are making a difference for our students. Effective teaching in all classrooms is where I think we'll elaborate a little bit more, and that's where I believe that that's where the work is actually happening, when we're side by side with teachers and really looking at students, and teachers are bringing some of those complex learners to our coaches, and we're really discussing what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and working with others to figure out a pathway and a plan of action. We also provide supports for some of our high school counterparts or high school learners who may take CCTE classes and other pathways to reach their full potential. So tonight we're going to elaborate a little bit in the student-centered coaching cycle realm and how we have collectively worked with our teams to support English learners and students with disabilities. So in each one of our student-centered cycles, we have focus students who are identified as students who are English learners or students with disabilities. And I have to say it's been a tremendous inquiry for our coaches as well, because we heard from our CAC members, like, how are we bringing this work to the forefront and how are we supporting students in the general ed classroom? This is how we're doing it. We're sitting side by side with classroom teachers and educational specialists and SEAs and providing supports from them, and also working with them to understand a little bit more about the students' strengths and what supports might be best for them as far as the design of our learning intentions. We also provide learning and language goals that are at grade level. Language goals have been new for our teams to really design the supports for our English learners. We found that through supporting the language goals, we're also supporting our students with disabilities because of the precision of academic language that we're asking them to do, the idea of metacognitive processing and articulating their thinking to a partner or to the class through their demonstrations and partnerships. Strategic partnerships have been also very helpful. In some cases, we do triad work. That allows the students who may be acquiring language or need extra practice to hear from 2 other partners and then articulate their thinking and maybe even using some of the stems or language frames that their counterparts are using. The differentiated learning design has been so amazing because it's working organically with the teacher and sometimes on the spot and in the moment. So having the support staff, our special ed counterparts in the classroom has been a tremendous help for our coaches. You'll see in a short video clip at the end of our presentation how some leaders are utilizing this and having impact on their teams and growing and replicating the process. I have to say that most of our leaders, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on them because they've been so amazing at taking this on and going into classrooms and teaching. And if there's been 2 or 3 teachers maybe at a grade level who have participated, they're taking it to other grade levels and they're actually replicating the process and learning with their teachers about this and bringing it to fruition. So it's been very exciting to hear the stories. I just heard one today from one of our principals who said, I was in the classroom at a 2nd grade, in one of my 2nd grade classrooms, and I actually did the coaching cycle. I led it, and I actually did the teaching, and she was saying it wasn't perfect, but that's not the point. The point is that we're learning alongside our teachers and demonstrating our own vulnerability with them and our own willingness to learn about our students even more. So I also want to highlight that our coaches all collected data on the whole class as well as the English learners and students with disabilities. So we actually have some deep deep conversations with the teachers about what do we see, where is there improvement, where is there some maybe plateauing, and what might we do to address that in future dates. So here's an example of how we look at data at the classroom level. And I probably forgot something because I'm just talking off the cuff and not talking from my notes. But if you have questions, I also real quickly wanted to bring a teacher voice in. We went to one of the schools and we brought the teachers in as the midpoint of our cycle. And she wrote a little poem. So I'm just going to lift 2 lines from that poem because I was so impressed that she wanted to share this about her experience and the impact of student-centered coaching cycles for all students. It said, I shifted from how I can help students to solve problems to how I can help students make sense of problems. And I think for all learners, making sense and making meaning has been so critical, and I see the gains that they're making when they're slowing down the learning to actually articulate and think about the problems before they solve it. So this is a demonstration. The first 2 bars on this data slide represent all students. So the first bar is at week 0, so that's the pre. The second bar represents the post-test for all 3rd grade learners at a particular school. The third bar represents the English learners and how they scored on the pre-test and how they scored on the post-test. And then we kind of justify the numbers for you in the other table. And then I'll pass it over to Sandra.
Okay, so I'm just going to walk you through some of our data. And so here you have the long-term English learner data. But it's important to note that this long-term English learner data is based on the LPAC. In the next slide, and I'll talk through that slide, I'll talk about the difference between, of course, the CELT data that we kind of have put to rest and then the new data. But this is the current data that we have. We were expecting, actually, that long-term English learner number to be higher than this. So while we didn't want it to be higher, we're glad that it still hovers around our 3,000 3,000 number that we kind of left off with the CELT data. And in actuality, currently, because we are in the reclassification window, so that number has actually dropped in the last 2 weeks to 3,266 students. So that's already less than that number. And in addition to that, we have approximately 120 students who are both, who are dual identified, who are eligible for reclassification. So that's an additional 120 of those 1,500 students that you see up there that are dual identified, that are LTELs and have IEPs. In addition to that, an additional 90 students are students from our TRACE program, and we are currently working with the school TRACE to ensure that we open up those reclassification doors for those students as well. So we're working with the school to provide an alternate reclassification process that we have in the district, and so now they're taking that on as well. So that number is actually less. The next slide is what I was talking about. So if you remember when I was here 4 years ago, that was one of the first things that you kind of tasked me with, and you were like, you need to figure out why are these 6,000, almost 7,000 English learners that we had, I think it was like 6,900 or something like that. You know, what are these students, what's going on? And so then we, as a district, have had a relentless focus on English learners and students with disabilities, and so that was one thing. Of course, you know, we've said that before, that improving Tier 1 instruction is crucial. So that's still the goal. We still have a goal of eliminating all long-term English learners. But then also at the same time, we had to strengthen the process behind, you know, the process that happens behind closed doors when students are eligible for reclassification. And so we ensured that every single student that's a potential reclassification student is looked at, has the opportunity to reclassify. And so we basically, you know, we are constantly looking at those numbers, and we monitor all of those numbers down to every single one of them. Right now we have approximately 4,000 students who are eligible for reclassification, and we're looking at every single one of those, which is why we know these numbers, you know how many are from TRACE, how many are, you know, both dually identified, and so we're still continuing to look at that. So that's still going to be OLA's goal, to eliminate probably we're going to end up around the same data. Will probably look very similar. We probably will be just under 3,000 when we're done with reclassification. We're hoping it'll be less, but we'll see. We don't close the reclassification window until January 30th, so we will see at that time, and then of course we will continue to focus on Tier 1 instruction. And then here we just gave you the number of students that are dual identified. These are students that are both English learners and have IEPs. And so this is just the numbers, you know, how many of them we have reclassified in the last 3 years. So as you can see those numbers there. Currently, to date, we have reclassified 1,258 students, and of those, 82 of them are students that are dual identified. So that's just right now. As of today, we ran the data today. And then here is just our, you've seen this before, I believe, and this is just our graduation rates for English learners based on the California dashboard. When we get the new updated numbers, then we will provide those for you. And I will now pass it over to Sarah.
Thanks. So just like Teresa explained, this is from the coaching cycles data for targeting students with disabilities. So week 1, again, is the first bar, the pre-assessment, and then, or week 0, and then the second bar is all students at the post-assessment, and then the third bar is just students with IEPs, and then their post-assessment. So really looking at outcomes on the classroom level and how we can show growth through that in all areas of different coaching cycles for math and literacy. The next slide is the total number of students. So as we go more global, you know what we're talking about. We often say students with disabilities, but oftentimes in our data, it's just talking about students that have IEPs. So we have students with disabilities that have other services through a 504 or through no services at all because they're not needed. So this is just talking about students with disabilities that actually have an IEP. So when we look at data, just remember there's a whole nother group that wouldn't be showing up in that result. So we have about 14.3%. The state average is about 11.7. So we look at that and think about what that means for us and what we need to do. The next way from our goal is to look at the classroom level and how that will impact more of these district-wide data points. So looking at our graduation rates from the California dashboard, we do see a bit of an increase, but we have a ways that we want to go. So taking some of that student center cycle and some of the other offerings that we've discussed with the pathways and different offerings through A through G and ways we can schedule students, as was mentioned in CAC, taking a deeper look at that to see if we can increase our graduation rates. Okay. The next part, as we look global, is our Smarter Balanced assessment. And Smarter Balanced is in just certain grades for students with disabilities, but as you can see, it's pretty plateaued. So we're also looking at some of that data and how the classroom work can show growth in this area as well. And hopefully through our different measures as well as the coaching cycles, we'll see that. So last but not least, we'd like to close our presentation with the voice of one of our principals. This is Sylvia McGrade at Adams Elementary. She's been an amazing thought partner, engaging in many of our conversations with our coaching cycle team. And we want to hear about her experiencing with widening the sphere of success for our students with English learners as well as our students with disabilities. So from someone who's experienced the coaching cycle.
Sorry, there's no video attached.
Click on the link on top of slide 14. There should be a video link.
Sorry about that. Should have given you a heads up. That's the great and magical Oz.
When it's in present mode, you can open it from there. There you go. It needs to be in present mode, and maybe you can right-click it.
I think he tried.
Do, 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 do. There's the link.
It's not letting him click the link.
We're sending in backup. It's really good for you.
Are there any teenage students in the audience that can go into the control booth and help them with the... Just kidding. Could copy and paste the link into a URL address. Yeah.
Questions we can answer.
Are there any comments or questions by board members? Trustee Barrera, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. What I thought was really encouraging was in Lalia Alali's presentation as well as Maura's presentation. I think they both talked about the importance of getting more students, whether it's English learners or students with IEPs, into the student-centered coaching cycles. So it's the perennial question that that we ask up here to the superintendent, and I'll ask it to you guys. Where are we in the process of scaling up so that we have more and more of our students?
Teresa, this question's for you.
Yes. You need permission. Where are we in the process of scaling up so that more and more of our English learners and students with IEPs have access to the student-centered coaching cycles?
Well, Sylvia McGrade would have shed a little bit of light on that.
She'll tell us.
However, you'll have to hear it from me.
All right.
So one of the ways that we do that is working with the site principal and really thinking about how can we support the students in the classroom, first and foremost with this special ed support in the classroom.
Yes.
However, we also know there sometimes is pull-out programs, so we're seeing how we can infuse our coaches into those small group pullouts so that we are beginning to replicate the same type of grade level expectations so that when they go back into the classroom and are receiving the core instruction, there's an element, one, of a routine and predictability for students to be able to respond to the expectations, the academic language, and the core content. And secondly, we are also working with of course, our LERTs from OLA who are partnering with the Common Core support teachers, and they are amazing at infusing those supports for our English learners. In fact, in some places, we're recognizing the need for them to actually take, for example, a number talk to the designated ELD, because it's the same types of structures and routines that we expect our English learners to be able to participate in, and this way they can have the opportunity to not compete with the classroom, but have that same type of expectation and experience with their peers as they're learning the language structure. So Ola's been working on that, the idea of constructing the language goals along with the language targets where that's posted in the classroom, and the teacher being more cognizant of the clarity of purpose and checks for understanding. That's professional learning that our site principals are learning. That's what our coaches are teaching into with our teachers. That's what our paraprofessionals, we had for math during the, parent conferences. There was offerings for paraprofessionals, and the math team held a PD for our paraprofessionals, and oh my God, they were the most amazing participants in that, where I was sitting at a table with two other ladies, and it was an incredible conversation about mathematics and how we can support our students, how they see themselves, one, as math learners, because sometimes math can be intimidating if you don't know the content, but it's about how can we support our students in accessing the meaning making first, because the calculations will come. It's like, how do you, first of all, interpret it, for instance, a word problem, decide what's really important before you even look at the numbers, then how might I use manipulatives to help myself with a visual representation. In all of our math coaching work, we're having all kids use math manipulatives and all students show a visual representation. It sounds super easy, but it's really complex. I'm sure that math president Beiser would know. Like, it's really difficult to show a mathematical representation if you haven't been asked to do that before.
So, and I appreciate it, and it's never an easy question when we ask it, because the way that you're building capacity in the system is that, we're not talking about that the process of teaching and learning that is developed through the student-centered coaching only exists when we have, somebody, an expert coach from the district come and work with an individual teacher. It's what we're wanting to see, obviously, at some point is that is the way teaching occurs in our district, and that's the way learning occurs. But I do think for us, it's important that we have some sort of picture about how we're building this capacity and bringing it to scale in the district, because we're really, as is appropriate and as the data that you present point out, we're hanging our hat on these strategies. I mean, we know the impact, that these strategies can make. But we know in order to sort of move those numbers, across the district, really for all of our kids, but in this case, for English learners or students with IEPs, our ability to really move those numbers at a large scale depends on the degree to which we do build that capacity across the district. And so I think having that picture, in some way that you can, that you can bring to us and present to us, I think is really important for us.
It goes to how we're being systemic and systematic. And so the scaling, when we take a strategy that's working, when you make it work for a child child in a learning cycle, then how does that become exponential? How does that replicate and scale so that we end up teaching across the whole system? So I think you're talking, what's the big picture plan for that? That is the perennial question, but we know is that this is the type of learning and engagement that lasts, that once, we always say, once you know, you can't unknow. Once you see, you can't unsee. You're learning this with certain groups of kids, and so we strategically decide where these learning cycles are going to occur. Like you said, hang our hat on it, but what's the systemic approach, or what's the systematic approach to this systemic way that we're doing it? And this just brought light to what it actually looks like when you hear it, but I see you're looking for a big landscape, like balcony view of it.
That's right.
All right, we do have public speakers on the item, so let's go ahead and hear from the public testimony. Maura Albrighton, you have 2 minutes, followed by Francine Maxwell, you have 2 minutes.
Hello again. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One is that I didn't hear anybody disagree with anything from my presentation, so I do like to just get that out there.
Let's just make that for the record.
Keeping it real. I wanted to just ask a couple questions and hopefully get answers at some point. Do we have coaching cycles in high schools? How do parents request coaching cycles? Thank you in advance for that. But my bigger question, again, actualizing, is what do we do, like with the coaching cycle premise, when kids actually get to middle school and are not able to read, where we no longer are teaching reading? I'd like to know how the coaching cycles relate to those, like when we've really missed the boat. And what do we do when kids reach high school? Like, it's great to intervene and work on basic concepts, but like once we're in high school, again, how is the coaching cycle going to support kids that are farther along? And I also want to make a plug that I happened to be past Fletcher Elementary School, random comment, and they had a sign saying that they were hiring paraeducators, and I just think that anywhere we have a paraeducator vacancy at a site, it would be great to have a banner or a marquee advertising, because that's kids that are not getting into general ed.
Francine Maxwell, you have 2 minutes.
You get to talk after you turn in your slip late when they do the presentation, but nobody else do. Slide number 11 is vague. If the percentage of students in the district with IEPs is 14.3, where is the breakdown by ethnicity and grade level? You cannot have the same goal for third graders as you do for 11th graders. Breakdown by grade level and ethnicity code would be more beneficial. Slide 10, special ed students max out at 3 math habits. Why is that? Are the habits geared towards students with no disabilities? If yes, then the IEP students will never be able to reach more math goals. Students, slide 12, students with special needs not graduating at a rate of students without special needs. Do you think the UC requirements have a negative impact on these students? What are these students, what are they doing for graduation? I think I heard that in her presentation. What a shame it is not to graduate because maybe of world language requirement or the higher level of math that is now required, because these students cannot have above 3 math habits. Maybe that's why they're not graduating, due to the high math. How ridiculous is that for students? Should be able to pass integrated math 3 to be used for all students, since the number of students for UC graduate is really dropping. Students with disabilities are not doing very well in SBAC, in both math and reading. Now what? Where are our supports for these students? Why aren't special ed teachers able to connect all their students daily instead of when they get around to it? Wouldn't it be better to spend money on students who are struggling at no fault of their own? LCAP Goal 3 sounds good, with no specifics on how teachers will get students to perform better. What are the specifics on how the students will be better able to attain more numbers in math habits? Once again, slide 10. So all I'm asking, I think District Deeds did a wonderful article when it comes to people in this department and the presentations that they give. So I'm hoping, because I love Dr. Evans and the way that he flips these slides, that he's going to ask some of my questions, especially the ethnic backgrounds.
Thank you. Any other board member comments or questions? Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, you have 2 minutes.
Last night at Lincoln, at the Lincoln Cluster, we had a presentation on reading, and there were parents there and principals. We had community people there, and we had an excellent discussion about the fact that you're talking about all these strategies, but they were wanting to know, what about the results? What are the results? What are the problems that are preventing us from seeing results? And so one of the things came out was, is it attendance? And some of the principals, to their credit for change, they spoke up and they shared how they're dealing with homeless kids, they're dealing with all the issues of society, the mental health issues, the families are going through crisis. And there were a couple of ministers in the audience from the community, and afterwards one of them came up to me and said that we really need to start reaching out more to those community supports, such as what we're doing with Perkins. We've got to go beyond just the school itself to meet all of these needs that extend beyond just our school, because the things that you're talking about are wonderful. That's the way it should be done. That's what we teach them at the university, and when they come out to the regular ed, to other schools, sometimes they don't get that. So I think it's great that we're now moving in the direction that universities have been in for a long time. And my time is up. So.
Thank you. Any other board member? Dr. Evans?
Can I just respond to Dr. Whitehurst-Payne? What you're talking about has something to do with when principals develop their year-long plan and looking at root cause analysis. What is standing in the way of students learning? And from an instructional, Tier 1 instruction is job one. Professional development, Tier 1 instruction, principals leading that is our core work. We also know that some of the barriers and some of the things that are holding students back are just like what one of the pastors said to you, is that there's other things that might be standing in the way. We ensure Tier 1 instruction, and then we use community supports for the social emotional learning. There's a whole other part of our team that's leading the instructional work that's around social emotional learning, intervening, health services, mental health services. So it's a comprehensive approach to it that we don't want to ever forget how to balance all of that when we're delivering on instruction for kids. Right.
They share that
they're looking for support.
Yes, they share that it's taken them off task, and I shared with you how one principal said that she had 12 students who were living in the basement of a church because the flood had flooded their apartment. Well, you think about it, that is taking her off task from instruction like this. So where are those kind of supports that, she needs to be able to call somebody other than herself so that they can help to take care of the needs of those students, and it goes on. That was just one principal. There were several of them sharing, but I'm just saying it needs to be real for the principals in order for it to be real to the kids.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Evans?
Yeah.
2 minutes?
Yeah, 2.5. A few different questions. First of all, on the long-term English learners, I remember you talked about when we had the 6,000 or 7,000, we went down to the 3,000, and I know that this number changed a little bit during the year, but obviously our goal is 0. Because, there might be a few because some extreme disability or something like that, but I'm just wondering if you have any idea about why this is seems to have kind of stalled around this number, because 5 years of instruction in English is very unacceptable, and I don't know why it went down so dramatically. Why can't it keep going down?
Yeah, correct. So I think, unfortunately, because of the transition between one assessment to the other, that's kind of where we couldn't continue that trajectory. So yeah, so I think the goal, which is why I said the goal will continue to be 0, and so now that we have a new baseline, so this 3,300 technically is our new baseline. The old baseline was 7,000 or whatever, and so because of that, now we have a new assessment that is much more rigorous, that is aligned, as you know, to the Common Core. So because English learners, like everyone else, else is expected to be college and career ready. So now this is where we will continue to work, to, again, professional development. We have many levels. The Office of Language Acquisition offers many layers of professional development for teachers. Of course, we are involved in the student-centered coaching cycles. We will continue, as Ms. Lalia had mentioned, it's crucial that schools continue to strengthen the integrated and designated ELD. We are, because of their recommendation, we always ask principals for their designated ELD schedules, but now we're moving it into an admin circular to make that more, the transition more official. So we are just, so that's, kind of where we're at this point. We will continue to use all the I guess, the resources and that we have been using for these last 4 years to ensure that we build off of those structures, I guess, so that we can continue to provide schools the same structures and then build to see how we can support students with this new assessment. So that's where we're at. We're in this, this baseline year, but continuing to work with what we know works.
I appreciate that explanation, and there was that change, and I think maybe it's even good that it's kind of stayed a fairly stable number, considering that it's a more rigorous standard right now. And then another question quickly on the LOTE. We have the people that are graduating with the seal of biliteracy, I'm assuming in several different languages. But first of all, to get that, is it there are different breakdown between advanced, proficient, and basic? It's either proficient or above they pass the LOTE test, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's 70% or above.
Okay, so that's what it is. And I guess I'm wondering if we could have something at the elementary level, because we talk about reclassification ceremonies and celebrating that people are learning English and so forth, but what about the fact that it's cool that certain kids are fluent in another language, and I just am wondering how that could be sort of highlighted and celebrated, or if there's something could be done in the classrooms that we're going to have each child from a different language teach a little bit to the other students to make it because we're always trying to work on making it an honor, a quality as opposed to a deficit. Right.
Yes, so we currently, at least in our dual language and biliteracy schools, we do have what we call the kindergarten commitment letter and a commitment award. So when little kindergartners graduate or they move on to first grade, in their ceremony, they receive an award that says that they commit to biliteracy or dual language all the way to 12th grade. So that's one thing that we use to celebrate. We also have the 5th grade Pathway to Biliteracy Award. So again, this is open to our dual language schools and our biliteracy schools. We have another one at the 8th grade. So basically it's the pathway to ensure that our students commit to biliteracy and dual language, as they're moving up the pathway. But we can certainly look at other ways that other students can be recognized. I meet with dual language principals 3 times a year, and that's something that they've asked for, some kind of event where we bring, our community, like our multilingual community, together and recognize, them. So I'm working on trying to figure out a way to do that with, with the resources that we have. But I think that's an excellent idea. So I think that's something that I'm currently working on.
Okay, and on the English learners graduation rate, does that include the reclassified?
So hold on, because you guys always ask me this, and I want to make sure I get that right.
This question is asked at least 10 times a year.
Yes, exactly. So yes, it includes those students that entered in the 9th grade as English learners, and whether or not they reclassified during high school, it includes those students. Yes, but it wouldn't include anyone who reclassified prior to 9th grade.
Well, then that's a problem.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
I've still got another couple questions.
You're on like 7 minutes, but go ahead.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I was keeping track on my
Okay. On the IEPs, you said that it's 11.7%, or excuse me, 14.3%, and it's 11.7% for the state. And I'm just curious, and I think it is a valid issue too. We don't want to under-identify or over-identify, and there can be different breakdowns to English learners. There may be an ethnic issue, and we've dealt with this for a lot of years. But that's a pretty significant difference between the state average and the district number. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think one of our goals that we've always had to look at our referral process and our interventions that we're providing prior to saying that a student requires services from an IEP. An IEP is only for students that cannot receive access to general ed in another way. So I think as we build the MTSS multi-tiered levels of support services and really look at what supports we can provide them while they're still general ed students prior to referring to special ed, I think we'll see growth for our not growth,
right,
percentage improvement in this area.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for your report. Oh, Trustee Barrera. Okay, well then after this item, we'll move board officer elections up because I have a massive headache and I'm not feeling well. I'm running a fever. So we can do board officer elections after this item, and then I'll excuse myself, and then the board can continue with the other agenda items. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask about, Lolly had also talked about support for parents at home. So how are we incorporating the high-impact home strategies for English learners and students with disabilities?
So I'll let Teresa take this on because we do have, remember we created the FOSS team, so the Family Outreach and Support Team. That's Ola and Faye, Family Engagement. But so I'll let her, we do a few things with them and she does a few things, but I'll let her talk about them.
We really work our people. So just so you have a little bit of background, I also have been meeting with Sarah, and we are also discussing how we might continue to exponentially expedite this process. So what we've done with our FOSS team with Ola is to work with the family engagement team to create more supports. So for example, we are almost finished with a strategy, elementary or TK5 math strategy, high impact home strategy for problems in context that will come with a presentation, like a PowerPoint presentation. It will also come with a high impact home strategy that parents can go back and practice with their students, and it's mostly about communication. We are thinking about how we replicate this process to parents at our neighborhood centers. So we're cross-training teams. So our elementary math coaches are cross-training our family engagement team as well as our Ola FOSS team, Family Outreach and Support Team. I'm working with Sarah and team members to develop a ways or what parents can expect when their student is maybe having an annual IEP, like how they can be more proactive, or the SST process. So we're kind of in that development brainstorming stage. We will be bringing in our parent leaders to help us really address their needs and what they need. We met with Mora. I have a hard time pronouncing her name, but we're getting ideas from her as well, and Lalia. So we are working with our parent leaders to develop tools and strategies that are helpful to them and for them. And those also will be shared with our Perkins team. Mm-hmm.
Dr. McQuarrie?
He said it. Okay.
Some many times over the last 8 years. All right, at this point in time, I will really thank you so much for your report and your work supporting the students and helping them to learn more. Appreciate that.
Maybe someday we can see Sylvia McGrade's video.
Yeah, the video. Just send the link to all of us. Yeah, that'd be great. So at this point in time, I'd like to, without objection, move to the balloting of the president. I'd like to nominate Dr. Sharon Whitehurst-Payne to be the next president of the school board. And so in the back of your envelope, you have these two fancy colored things. So on them, you just need to put a check by who you would like to vote for president and then sign it. And I, again, am nominating Dr. Sharon Whitehurst-Payne to be the next president of the San Diego Unified School Board. And then fold it in half because it's a secret.
Right. I'll fold it in half this way.
Then you pass it down. Okay. And then I'd also like to nominate Dr. John Lee Evans to be the next Vice President of the San Diego Unified School Board, so that his name's on the top of the yellow one, if you want to just put an X.
Press the green button.
Yes. So it's okay to turn in both ballots at the same time, if you so desire. Yeah.
Start with the president.
All trustees have voted for Sharon Whitehurst Payne for president. And all trustees have voted for John Lee Evans for vice president.
At this point in time, I'd like to pass the gavel. Pass the gavel to President Dr. Whitehurst Payne.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to my colleagues, and I guess you guys felt like it was my turn finally, huh?
Well,
it took a while.
Put me in the hot seat.
Took a while.
It took a while,
To get
okay.
you there.
I'm here.
Can we just say, as he's exiting the building, thank you to Kevin Beiser for his service over this last year as our
Yes,
president.
we do want to thank him. He helped us to be precise and firm. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for your support. And now, John, you're going to be here to help me to keep all the speakers. We're on G for the board consent agenda, but
I move to approve the board consent agenda.
we have a speaker for G5, so we
there-
need to pull that off. Make that modification.
Oh, okay. So I move to approve all of the G items except for G5.
Okay. We have a motion. All in favor of it, please vote. Okay, that passes. And now we need a motion on G5, and then we'll have our speaker.
I move approval of item G5.
Second, okay, thank you. Now we'll hear from citizen.
I'm very concerned that these representatives that are being appointed to the ICOC are just there to support Richard Barrera and how he plans to spend the bond money. This is going to be an unlimited credit card for Richard Barrera. These representatives are just there to rubber stamp whatever this board says. Now, the students have been waiting for years for clean bathrooms, and they still don't have them. But I expect that within the next year, you guys will be approving a brand-new ed center for yourselves. And another issue with the ICOC is that it's not transparent. It refuses to post the recordings. How difficult is it to post the recordings? And more than that, the ICOC deletes the recordings after 1 month. So if you really wanted to be transparent and you really wanted to have a citizens oversight committee, you would be posting these recordings so people can actually hear what's being said in these meetings and maybe hold people accountable, because sometimes there are some pretty bad things that are going on in there.
Thank you. Please, are there any questions or comments, discussions on G5? Please vote otherwise.
Did you guys have a question?
Passes 4-0. And now let's move down to items H3. And that item is a proposed revision to Board of Education bylaws and annual readoption of board bylaws. And do we have a speaker on? And again, that's citizen.
So moving public participation to the end of the meeting is just another tactic to eliminate criticism. In other words, you just want to be able to do what you want to do, and no one gets to say anything about it. Some of these meetings run hours and hours long, and I've already made some recommendations, including eliminate the board reports. They didn't used to have them, and somehow when Barrera and Beiser got into the board, they get to sit there and speak ad nauseum about things that really don't add anything to the public's knowledge of what's going on in public education. The board members won't even provide their calendars. It's been weeks since I requested the calendars. I can't get them. Now you want to move public comment to the end of the meeting, and we just heard finally that it took a lawsuit so that emails will be kept for at least 2 years. Moving public comment at the end of this meeting would have been great when school board member Marnie Foster was accepting illegal gifts, when she was creating recognition certificates without board votes for her political allies. And not many people would have stayed to be able to comment because it takes hours and hours, and that's especially difficult on elderly people. And the great thing is about it is that you guys can continue the meeting until you see that this school building is empty. And you can pretty much eliminate public comment. And that's supposed to, it used to be called public participation. Public participation. And you're pretty much going to eliminate this. So when you heard that Lincoln student yelling at the superintendent and calling her a liar, that's the thing you're trying to eliminate, the truth. Just people telling you the truth. And that student called the superintendent a liar out of sheer frustration. Sheer frustration. And she was telling the truth. So that's what you guys are doing when you move public comment to the end of the meeting. You just want to eliminate public participation, make it as difficult as you can, and be able to control who can speak.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll move approval, yeah.
Second.
Okay, discussion here.
Yeah, I want to make clear to the public in terms of this item, we are not cutting back on public comment in any way. There are two types of things. There's public comment on the agenda items, and then public comment on non-agenda items. And what has happened is we have disfavored the people who are coming to give a public comment on an item that is scheduled to be spoken about at the board meeting. They don't know when their item is going to come up. They must come at the very beginning of the meeting, and then they have to sit through sometimes a half hour of testimony of things that are not related to the agenda. So we're not in any way reducing public comment. Public comment will happen on every item all the way through the agenda. The only thing that we're putting at the end of the meeting is the non-agenda public items, because the people who are coming for specific board items are having their chance to speak earlier. So I just want to make that clarification.
Any other discussion on it? Please vote. Thank you. That passes 4-0. Yes.
President Whitehurst-Payne, can I move items H4 through H7?
Thank you. Yes.
I will second that.
Thank you. And we have no speakers on that. Are there any comments from board members? Otherwise, let's vote on that. And again, passes 4-0. That takes us down to I. Oh, let's see. We had I1. Yes, thank you. I1, do we need you have a presentation on this?
Yes, we do.
You have a presentation. So let's get a motion on the floor.
I move to approve the first interim financial report.
Second, okay, and now we'll have the presentation.
Thank you, President Whitehurst-Payne. I get to say that for the first time. Dr. Ottinger, our Chief Business Officer, and Ms. Thede are coming up to present the first interim financial report. This is required, AB 1200 requires that LEAs file the interim reports in their annual budget and collect the financial data, and that's what we're presenting this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent Martin. Good evening, President Whitehurst Payne, members of the board. This evening, we have the opportunity to review the district's first interim financial report. As you know, this is our first public presentation on what will eventually become the adopted budget for the 1920 school year. So, to get ourselves situated, we will start with our budget development timeline. You will note our current location in December. At this point, we are bringing forward our projections based on the guidance from the San Diego County Office of Education as we all await the first look at what will be Governor Newsom's first budget in roughly a month. We will then review the budget with you in March at the second interim, followed by the first and second read of the budget in June. As you know, we can expect shifts and changes throughout the year, and staff will continue to keep the board and the public update based on the newest information. Wanted to take a moment as the year progresses just to revisit the board and the district's adopted principles for financial planning, and just take a brief moment to lift up the board and the district's choices to hold these forward as we make decisions, and take a look back at just one example of how the board has used these principles to help guide complicated decisions. So we've bolded one principle that really has to do with the long-term strategies. And just as an example, last year what we experienced across the state in terms of K-12 education was at this time last year, we did not know what Governor Brown's final budget would look like. In January, we heard about a concept of a specific dollar amount of one-time funds. At that time, the one-time funds was projected. We made our projections and presented based on a certain dollar amount. In May, those one-time funds increased. And at that point, the board was prudent and cautious, knowing that things could change, and in fact they did. After our board adopted our budget, we got the final budget from the state, and the one-time funds had dropped significantly. And not just significantly from May, actually significantly less than they were originally projected in January. So just wanted to take a moment that the board has continued to take a long-term mindset and plan for such possibilities, which really leads us to a highlight of where and how we receive our guidance. There are many organizations that are very attuned to the actions in Sacramento and have their opinions on what the next state budget will look like. For our district, and just for public clarity, for our multi-year projections, we do use the guidance from the San Diego County Office of Education, which does come through the State Department, as they do provide our fiscal oversight. And so these projections include both revenue and also expenditure projections. And this evening, we're going to highlight some of these from the overall SACS report, starting with the multi-year revenue assumptions. You'll note here in some of these larger areas, we are seeing stability. However, we are also projecting for a decrease in enrollment. So again, you'll see overall stability. However, the complication is a decrease in enrollment, decrease in ADA, which then decreases the projections, which really leads to some of our more significant expenses. So as mentioned, we are seeing increases in expenditures, most notably from pension-related expenses, health and welfare, honoring our step and column adjustments. You'll also notice on this slide, again for complete transparency, that our projected shortfall is now $36.9 million. And it's a very valid question to ask why that number is actually less than was brought forward publicly in June at budget adoption. And I want to first take a moment just to thank the Controller's Office, the entire finance team, this district, we have a practice of completely recalculating the first interim so that we can sit here this evening with the knowledge that all of the finances have been recalculated versus a different approach, which would be just to roll the projections at budget adoption and just roll it forward and do the recalculations between first and second interim. So the major reasons why we saw this decrease in the shortfall from $40 million to 36.9 is mainly due to both Medi-Cal reimbursements and also savings from vacant positions. So we wanted to honor this and call out that change along with all of our other expenditure projections. And quite frankly, as was discussed earlier, the cost to operate our organization, they're increasing faster than the state-provided revenues. And even if we were to keep, theoretically, all things the same, our major expense areas, as noted here, with special education, with step and column, with our pension, with our health and welfare, with utilities, those costs are increasing at a much faster rate than our revenues. And the LCFF, under Governor Brown, has in fact increased funding. However, it should be noted that that has come in the form of, frankly, restoring monies that was owed to school districts during the last financial crisis. And the increase in funding through the LCFF that we've received have been offset by increased liabilities and the general increase in cost of living that all of us as an organization and all of us as individuals, we all feel across the system and across the city and across any area as we are experiencing just increased overall costs. So with that, we have included this chart just to hone in on the PERS and STIRS pieces, which is different than any sort of pension costs are not part of OPEB. And so we have called out here the pension costs. And as you can see here, as we all know, has been part of discussion, they're a year-over-year increase, and that has been part of the direction from the state, which is to increase the amount that the employer must contribute. And so this is a graphical representation. And as you know, these are difficult times, these are challenges. However, this district, this staff, this superintendent, this community, we have a growth mindset. And despite the challenges, we will continue to follow the guiding principles, and we will ensure that we balance our budget each and every year. At this point, we are bringing forward at a high level these solutions, and the staff is recommending the following solutions as we refine the budget throughout the year. In a moment, I'll address some of the moving parts that, again, we will continue to provide information as it's updated. You can see here in terms of central office reductions, continuing freezes, because any dollars that are saved in the current year can be, anything we don't spend today can be moved forward to help with next year's shortfall. Continue to identify a series of efficiencies within programs and services, and other reductions as necessary, which gets to all of these pieces again as we sit in December, a month prior to seeing the new governor's budget. We are attuned to that shift, which we will see those versions in January and May and June as expected. We are continuing our collaborative conversations with our partners in labor. There will be impacts of collective bargaining, which may have shifts. As my colleague, the chief of HR, will discuss, as part of a yearly process with our organization, there are strategic layoffs or certificated classified layoffs as needed in March as part of an overall process. Additional unexpected costs or revenues that are unforeseen at this point. The update to step and column, which is being completely calculated for the following year. The minimum wage analysis. Anytime the minimum wage is increased, it can cause some compaction with other Other employees, first of all, just the wage increase has an impact for employees that are at that pay grade, and then also it can create a compaction with employees that are close to minimum wage, and it's something that our colleagues in HR and finance were all working through. Then also reclassification costs. We have employees that are up for reclassification, and that can have some financial impacts. And then of course the CalPERS rate. The CalPERS has its own board that if they make changes, that will have an impact on our system. Which leads to the staff's recommended board action. And we are bringing forward, again, a positive budget certification. We have had continued dialogue with the San Diego County Office of Education. They understand where we are. They understand our guiding principles. They understand the board and the direction. And so we are recommending a positive certification along with directing the staff and the executive team to identify the greater efficiencies and the programs and services along with the other adjustments and continue to bring them back to the Board of Education. So this is the staff recommendation. And then...
Oh, she's on top.
Update. I will have my update, I think immediately following this. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. I hang out with Greg.
So we have the motion on the floor.
Yes.
And the second, do we have any speakers? Okay. Any discussion from board members?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm very glad that we have a positive certification. I think when Superintendent Martin came on, we talked about building a bridge from being in the hole to where we could kind of come out even, and we've reached that point by eliminating the structural deficit. And also what you're pointing out at the 36 million is about 25% less of a shortfall than it was at this time last year. And then the question is always will we even get enough to meet the status quo? And that remains to be seen because of the increased costs, whether the state will, when they talk about we're giving you an increase, is it enough of an increase to actually stay even? And that's the big question. And obviously, with your one slide here about the pension, that's one case of where they're giving us more money with one hand and taking away with the other hand. And then, of course, the other item that we have to adjust to is enrollment. So if we have a lower enrollment and need fewer teachers, it's not that we wouldn't be increasing class size or anything. We're just making sure that we have the exact number of teachers for the exact number of students. So thanks for the work that you've done so far on preparing this report, but the real picture will come out next year.
Any other board members? Well, let's vote on that. Michael, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, a couple of things. One on page 6. It seems like the increased special ed costs have had a major impact. It's 2/3 of our search for the increase amounts to 2/3 of what we need for the solution. Very good. Page 6.
Dr. Mike, would you like me to comment on that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you bringing that up. It's an important clarification to help understand when we look at this contribution piece. We know that similar to other school districts, the state and federal funding that is provided does not cover the needs of our students that have IEPs. And we have a commitment to ensure that those needs are covered, and so we do cover with general fund. Now, the increase that you see here is not necessarily an increase. It's not necessarily due to an increase in identification of students or services. The increase that you're seeing here, because we have at least two different funding sources, general fund, which is captured in the, for lack of a better term, northern section of the presentation. The contribution to special education, those costs are increasing because much of that funding goes to staff. And the staff that are part of the contribution in special education, each of those staff members also are eligible for step and column, are also eligible for the salary increase, are also eligible for STIRS or PERS, are also eligible for the health and welfare premiums. So that is why, for the most part, you're seeing that year-over-year increase. It's because people are, staff are represented in both areas, and so we're seeing those increases. So the upper section impacts that lower piece.
So we would have the shortfall regardless? So does the increase 21 million have any impact at all on the shortfall?
It's part of the same.
It's part of the same?
Yes.
Because okay. And then at the same time, we have an increase. I wonder if there's a relationship between the increase in special ed cost as it relates to the declining of student enrollment. And it looks like our student enrollment is projected being down 1.5%. Usually it's 1.1 or 2%, unless I did the numbers. Seems like our projected enrollment dropping from...
to about 1,500 students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
According to
closer
the
to
chart.
1.5%, and our trend has been 1.2, I think. But I'm just wondering why, if there was seems to be like we're projecting a larger number of decreasing in student enrollment this coming year than we have in the past.
So that number has varied, and at this point, that number is the demographer's office has completed, the school by school, and based on the conversations about possible influxes of military, but also tracking the trends of, we have several instances where we have large 12th grade. This year we have fairly full 12th grade classes who are matriculating on to college and career, followed up by smaller class sizes. And so when you take the aggregate of all of those schools, that's where we have this year's projection. And in last year's projection, the demographer's office was within less than 100 students based on that roll-up. So they start with each school and they calculate each school, which then leads us to that overall number.
Looking for solutions. Thanks.
Anybody else? Is it John? Okay, then we're ready to vote on it. Just go ahead. Please vote. And that passes 4-0. Thank you. And thank you. And now we're on to your item I-4. Personnel update.
Are you going to abandon the case?
Yeah.
No, that's what I mean.
I wasn't sure if I was suddenly being told to return.
Good evening. All right, good evening, Superintendent Martin and members of the board, President Whitehurst-Payne. This is the third regular personnel update requested by the Board of Education. And if you recall, the purpose of this report is to share with you the impacts of the 2018 layoff, the one that took effect on July 1st of 2018. This item is provided for your information, and no action is needed tonight. Many of the impacts that we're going to discuss tonight are directly correlated with what you just heard in our Chief Business Officer's presentation, what we've discussed tonight in terms of the inadequacy of funding in the state of California. And so these are an unfortunate occurrence that happens when we are inadequately funded as a state. So I have tweaked this chart from the last two presentations that we have brought before the board for an update. And what you see here is when there are limited funds available, our sites, our school departments must make difficult choices to ensure that students' needs are met. As we have shared in previous personnel updates, the position eliminations that took effect for the 2018-19 school year that are listed in the far left-hand column were not directed by the district as a way to solve the budget. Rather, they were a result of decisions made at the school site and department level. As part of our budget development process, school sites and departments have made choices in January and February, given limited funds, so that they can best serve the needs of students and families. Those individual site and department decisions are what resulted in the far left column, the 156 notices that were issued in March. Once the board approved the issuance of the notices and the elimination of the positions, we began the process to notice employees of the board action, provide them with their seniority-based options for possible reemployment, and then assign the employees to any vacant positions that were available. As you can see from this slide, there were a total of 156 employees noticed in March of 2018. This number includes all bargaining units as well as non-represented managers and confidential employees, but excludes credentialed staff who are in temporary contracts or leave replacements. As of July 1, the number of employees who were actually laid off or without employment was 37. That number decreased in July and September as resignations came in. Resignations, retirements, leaves of absences allowed people to be recalled or reemployed in certain positions. You'll note that from July 1st of this year to November 30th, we have had 284 separations from the district, and these separations have allowed people to be reemployed or hired into vacant positions. Currently, for our credentialed staff, the remaining areas are the same as what I reported to you in October, which are Spanish, French, and ECE. While the number has not changed since the last report in terms of employees who remain in laid off status, we continue to reemploy individuals who were impacted in both the 2017 layoff and the 2018 layoffs. For example, we have recalled all multiple subject teachers except one teacher who was offered a position but waived their right to be recalled this year. This month, we have added data related to employees who are not completely laid off but who obtained other employment within the district as a result of the layoff, and that's the box on the far right-hand side. As you know, when the district eliminates a position, the most senior employees can displace or bump employees with less seniority. When the bumping process occurs, classified employees might find themselves in a position that has less hours or months than the position they previously held. This chart to the far right captures the number of classified employees who are currently employed with us, but who were impacted by the layoff. These employees may be offered additional hours and months of pay for up to 63 months from the date of their layoff in the classification that they were laid off in. The next slide is a little bit different than what we've discussed before and what I've shared with you before, but the topic of layoffs can give an organization a negative impact in the eyes of the public. The purpose of this update, this portion of the update, is to ensure people have hope despite the challenges presented in a layoff situation. Layoffs are only necessary given two factors that are beyond the district's control. One we've discussed at various points tonight, which is the inadequacy of funding. And you saw from this last presentation that we have more expenditures than we have revenue coming in. In order for the district to work within our minimal funds provided for our operation, a layoff is required in order to make adjustments needed to provide instruction to our students. The second factor is that layoffs are governed by strict rules and that we must follow procedures to ensure that people have their rights honored. Regardless of those challenges, the data on this slide demonstrates there are numerous employment opportunities despite a layoff that may need to occur. This slide shows that our employees take advantage of our transfer policies. Those are the areas in green on the left. In addition, employees also have a number of opportunities to promote, and you see those in the orange categories. The remainder of the categories demonstrate that employees are able to return to the district through recall, return from leave, and are able to be rehired. More than 2,000 employees have taken advantage of these opportunities since the 1st of this year, July 1st of this year. The other thing that I wanted to share with you are some good things that have been happening. One, I've talked with the board and discussed our classified hiring events that we hold. We have held 3 of them. We have hired 70 people from just those classified events, in addition to all the other hiring that we are doing. This week, we are holding 2 simultaneous hiring events for paraeducator substitutes and clerical substitutes, which we desperately need. And I appreciate Ms. Albritton, but she's not here anymore, noticing the signs on the marquees. That was an idea that came out of some work with our colleagues and our principals. And so they very graciously, we asked for a list of everybody who had a marquee and asked everybody who had a marquee to put up some language to advertise that we are hiring for our clerical substitute and our paraeducator positions. For sites that don't have marquees, we have an amazing print shop, and we're going to have some banners that we're going to put up on fences or wherever the sites want to put them to advertise the same things. We have some amazing properties that are on very highly traveled streets, and we have the ability through some very low to no cost resources, market opportunities for people to join our team. And so I'm glad one of our fans saw those. The other thing that I've previously shared is that we interview on a regular basis. So on average, we interview around 45 certificated candidates during a week. And why that's important is, although we may not be offering them a job immediately, we need to build up our pool so that when we have a need for staff, if somebody has to leave suddenly, if they get ill, if they move, or for whatever reason, we have a pool of qualified candidates that we're able to give to sites so that they can interview and have candidates. We also have participated in 2 hiring events this year that have attracted candidates from all over the country. One was virtual, which was a very fascinating experience for us. We've also continued to meet with our university partners to prepare and to interview our graduating classes. And so we've also worked with them to streamline our hiring process for student teachers who want to substitute in our district, so that that process is easier for them as well as they substitute during their student teaching. And then one other exciting thing that we're doing this week is I said it already, never mind. I was going to tout our hiring event on Thursday of this week for our paraeducators. So as always, I like to close with just taking a moment to appreciate the hard work of our recruitment team, of our school sites, of everybody who works to ensure that we employ and re-employ people and give people opportunities to work for the amazing students of this school district. And just some very interesting highlights. We have fingerprinted more than 2,000 employees and volunteers. We've seen 7,987 people in our front counter, and we have processed 8,090 support calls from July 1st of 2018 to November 30th. So there's a lot of amazing things happening, and as Greg shared and we've been discussing, a layoff is terrible, and I'm the first one to say I don't want to do one. But given our lack of resources, and all of our decisions around staffing are made for kids. So there are times when we might need more math teachers than English teachers. Because we have limited resources, that may require us to do a layoff. There are times when we may need more of this than that. And so that's really the scenario that we want to ensure that people understand. It's not a layoff to slash and burn things, but it's being strategic and being thoughtful about how we manage and use our resources.
Thank you. Board members, would you like to make any comments? No speakers.
I just really like the idea of advertising those hard-to-fill positions at the schools, because I think in general, our classified employees more often come from the neighborhood. And so the possibility of a parent who has a child in the school taking a job during school hours is it's a double win.
Yes. Others? And I too want to thank you for that, because we're always talking about we don't get enough publicity, but it needs to be in a positive direction. And it is the best. They can walk to the school and serve us and help out. I think that's great. Also, looking at this process, we're at the end of the year for our budget cycle, and we're starting off for the next year. But from the entire year of 2018, we wound up with 23 people who are displaced. And starting again, these people would roll over again into our new cycle. And it's something, last year I believe we had 0 at one point.
We had 0 at one point who were in the certificated world. Previously, we had only reported to the board on the impact of the certificated lab. This one includes all groups. Yeah.
Yes, but thank you all. We don't look forward to having to lay anyone off, but we'll start the cycle again for the 2019 year. And with that, thank you very much for your reports, both of you.
Thank you.
I believe item J23 and, oh, so there, can I get a motion?
President Whitehurst Payne, J23 and J33.
Thank you. A second. Second on that, Dr. McKay?
Did we vote on the first January?
Yes, we did.
I forgot, okay.
Please vote on J23 and J33. And that passes 4-0. And public testimony, do we have no additional public? Thank you all for this meeting, and my first meeting done with.
January 8th.
Next meeting will be on January 8th at 5 o'clock here in the auditorium. 3:30 will be our closed session. Thank you.
Go ahead. That's it.